So, what do you say? Yeah? All right.
Thursday, it must be planning board.
Right, so, we continued the, site plan review, we did a site plan visit, and let's pick up where we left. This was a, site plan review for a conversion to 4 units, and, after the site visit, there were some requests for more information. So, Vicki, are these the things that you wanted? Are you satisfied?
I'm just looking at it for the
Okay.
first time now, so.
And I had, what I saw in the minutes was, add the parking area for the business, location of the outside lights and septic tank for the shop.
Okay, well, I don't see the new parking lot. Or is this it?
Sorry, I should have labeled it
Labeled
over
it.
here,
Okay,
Vicki.
that's
Yes,
it.
that is the new
Okay.
parking over there.
And you're talking about a second driveway too?
Yes, so, there's an old cut in at that location there now.
Mhm.
So, I met with, DOT,
Mhm.
a few weeks ago, and talked to them about reutilizing that old cut.
Mhm.
So what we'd like to be able to do is have trucks pull in to our original driveway
Mhm.
and then be able to exit out on that end.
Mhm.
That way we eliminate the amount of traffic that would go in and out across from Pat and Peter's house. And just make a simpler entrance and exit out of that parking area.
So, do you have a permit for that?
So the state, we discussed that with them. Des down there hasn't gotten back to me on it yet.
Okay.
But that's what we talked to. It's an old cut that used to access, I think a trailer that
Yeah,
used to
there's a
be out
trailer
in
there.
there.
Yeah, Mrs. Dennis is true.
Yeah. You'll see I marked the ditch, so the ditch runs towards that, but there's a culvert that crosses Route 10. And then on the south side of it, the ditch runs north and south, and there's another culvert that crosses Route 10. So it's not a culverted
Mhm.
cut there off of Route 10.
So would all the residential users of the property also exit that way?
No, I think they would probably, I think we would intend for them to continue to use the original driveway coming out. That would be more of an access for trucks to be able to pull in, use this parking area, and then drive back out on the other side.
Have you determined how wide that's gonna be?
We talked about it with the Department of Transportation, with Des there, and we talked about what it is now, which is about 30 feet or so. So she kind of left it saying, you guys drive trucks, you kind of know what you need to have there to enter and exit out of that space.
But that's not shown to scale here at all, so the width of the driveway. I mean, part of the thing about, part of the thing about this is trying to obviously make it work, so your trucks are doing well, but so that it doesn't look, like a big parking lot and commercial.
And that's why we added in the landscape screening
retail
as
thing,
you,
right,
as you had discussed.
right. Because that's gonna be a much bigger, than you've shown, driveway entrance, just,
No seat left.
is the current dimension of your parking lot good enough so that you can make the swing with a truck to get
It
into
is.
that, or get out of that driveway? And then does most of your traffic, would that go north or south?
Typically, most of our, it's a little bit split. I mean, it totally depends on where we're going. If we're gonna do deliveries down in town, we head towards town. If we're headed north, we head north.
Okay. So you need sight distance from both, which, do you have a sense about what your landscape screening is going to be?
I don't have a particular species in mind. I think it's probably gonna be, some type of conifer in there. I think one thing that we would do is probably have a mixture of grass space, along with that landscape screen.
And you can see several hundred yards both directions. That's a good thing about that property. I mean, it is a
Yeah,
50
pretty
mile,
straight.
40 mile an hour speed limit, but you can see a
Yeah.
long way both
Yeah,
directions.
because you're obviously gonna need to keep the.
Right, so
view
the screening is basically
come out both
between
ways.
that ditch and the power line that runs through there, which is a pretty wide stretch.
Mhm.
So that would keep it back from, from the ditch, approximately 15 feet or so.
Yeah, when you had there was like a three-sided concrete storage area
Like a
there.
bunker?
And that,
Yeah.
is that gonna,
That's all.
that's gone?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's gone, yeah.
No, it's not gone.
No, but I mean, it will, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're changing the location of your sign?
Yeah, I just thought that that would be the better place to do it over in that little flat area. When I met with Des from DOT, she wants us to kind of have green space that kind of defines the entrance, along with putting an asphalt apron, pulling in and out there, just to eliminate dirt coming out onto the road. So,
So you'll need to have that on both ends, asphalt aprons?
yes.
Or do you have,
Oh,
the
yeah,
extra for
absolutely, sorry.
these two?
So it seems like,
That's the updated.
I don't really like to have too many signs, but you probably need to have an exit only sign, so that people don't turn into this first
Okay.
one, and having your, identification sign up here. Is it gonna be as visible as you want it to be if it's here? Because I mean,
No, I
the other one
think
is
it will
pretty
be actually.
visible. and I
Yeah,
just
but
wondered
I
if
would
this
rather,
would
I
be
think, have
more visible.
Jeannie have that landscape screen on the
Mhm.
top of that bank there,
Yep,
opposed to having a sign. I think it makes
Yeah.
more sense to have it down on the flat area coming from the south.
and is that gonna be like a sign that has the removable letters like you have?
No,
Or
it's
is it
gonna
gonna
be
be,
Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
wood framed.
and you can incorporate your pretty logo and all that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that, because I mean, you've got a whole identity with
Yeah,
that
oh, no
color
doubt.
scheme and that, so. Now, the people who live here, where are their mailboxes?
So I think we're gonna, and, that's a detail that we haven't gotten into, other than I think we would ask people to have PO boxes. If somebody is requesting to have a license, a mailbox on site, I did discuss with Des the fact that she would like to have it so the mail person can pull off from the road, to do that.
Yeah.
So I think we would probably try to incorporate a space, maybe at the end of the sign, to where they could drive in and have, a few mailboxes there.
And the Valley News too.
Yeah.
Now, are these people gonna be responsible for their own trash, garbage removal?
No,
or-
we have that on site now,
Mhm.
for the business, so, we just figured that that would incorporate into that.
So you have a dumpster that they can just use?
That's correct.
So where's that located?
So right now, well, as you know, everything's kind of
Everything's
in flux.
yeah.
So
Where do you want
the
it?
goal is to have that up on the back side of the shop, to really keep it out of focal point and, really have it accessible from coming in and out of the shop, so.
Mhm. So it'll be over here somewhere?
Yeah, I think probably on, kind of on the eastern side of the shop.
And that's used by everybody then?
Yes.
Are you gonna need to have that hardened surface so that somebody can get there to dump it, or?
Well, there's hard pack there
Right,
now,
hard
so,
pack, okay.
at this point, the whole yard will be hard pack versus asphalt, so.
Why can't the mailboxes stay where they are?
I think,
I mean, they have, get off the road right there where I was at.
so I think her, if I understood it, Peter, and we didn't get into a lot of detail about it, but I think she just expressed that when you start to get multiple boxes, it's more time than they wanna be parked beside the road. Now granted, where we've got them there now is a pretty good spot because there's room to get off the road and they're not
But will
halfway
there
in.
be room down the other end? Because you got a ditch there. Cool.
Right, so, it's gonna be a little bit of a, I think, work in as we get the concrete bunker out of there and kind of see where that cut ends. But I would probably have Des come back up from the state and take a look at that with us and say, here's a good place to do it.
You can't have it right down the driveway. It has to be off the
Right,
driveway
it's gotta
to
be
get
in
down.
enough that they can pull off and
Which it already
access
is.
it.
maybe you could just say that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Have a,
Wow.
box at the post office.
Well, some people don't get into town so much. I mean,
Right.
I just wondered, because it wasn't shown, those things usually show up somewhere, and you wanna have it where you can plow easy, and then post office will be able to pull off and
Right.
access it easily as well.
So it definitely was part of the discussion with the state.
I'd also recommend just checking in with the postmaster
Okay.
or in line to
Sure.
just.
See what they have to say.
Yeah, so that, because they may want something different than the state wants, and
Right,
just
right.
kind of work that out between
Sure.
everybody and.
I'm curious if we are looking sort of at a combination of commercial and residential, and wouldn't the mailboxes and so forth be easier if it was accessible up in the more residential area of the? I don't-
Could be, I guess that
rather
would
than
be a
on Route
question
10?
for the post office if that
I'm
was.
not sure
Route
maybe
10.
so the post office driver would drive up here.
Yeah,
They
I'm
won't
sure
do
you
that.
would get them to do that.
No, they won't do that.
Again, down to put mine on my side of the road, they come south anyway, so they can take mine on the way back.
Right, right.
Then separate one side of the road to the other. And I don't have no problem with mine on my side of the road.
So that's an option.
Right now, we're both on the same side. but
Right.
I don't mind not having to travel across the road to get my mail.
It's a perk, yeah.
Would probably be good, Peter.
Okay, anything else?
We haven't gone through the completeness and all that.
You mean the checklist? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm getting at, is we should go through the,
So,
I mean,
just to make sure I'm catching all the things, so Jeannie, you'd asked about additional wastewater for the potential of more employees. So I talked to the septic designer about that. And I think, so there was something that, when we originally looked at the design, Tom Otterman had asked if we wanted to do the system within the septic tank called a Presby maze. And that would decrease the leach field size. When we looked at it, we said, well, you know, if we can stay within our original, you know, bed footprint, we would prefer just to do the additional tubes and not add something into the septic tank. So when you brought up the question of, you know, the additional wastewater,
Yep.
I talked to Tom and said, well, you know, what do you think about this? And he goes, well, we would need to increase the bed size, which he's like, you know, we don't really wanna do. So let's go back to looking at putting the maze in the tank. And so in reality, we may actually be able to shrink the bed size down and still accommodate the additional water that would come from the additional employees. So Tom is working on seeing how that will work, but he said it will absolutely, even without changing the bed size, will absolutely give us the additional percentage that we need for those employees by just adding the maze into the tank.
Okay,
And in turn, it may end up actually shrinking the bed size down too,
okay.
so.
So we're still talking about 5 employees and then 4 dwelling
Right.
units.
okay.
And I did go onto the dark sky,
Yeah, they've got
lights.
tons of
It's
ones.
pretty awesome.
But you can also just go on, Google it, Amazon's
Yeah,
got
it was,
plenty
but
of
it was
them.
just nice to
Yeah.
kind of see all the different options that were
Mhm,
available for the
mhm.
downcast
Yeah,
lights.
yeah.
So that
You-
was,
You
that was
don't have to
good.
go modern, they can get coach-style lights that are
Right.
shielded with the light up in.
Yeah, I
so
saw
it's
they were
still
recessed right up
traditional.
in there,
Yeah,
so,
you
yeah.
can get all different styles.
Yeah, it looks like a ton of options, so.
Yeah.
All right, we ready for the checklist?
Yeah, but just, and so of all these, there's gonna be one accessible unit, which is the one for your folks,
Right.
and the others won't necessarily.
They're
be.
not gonna be ADA,
Uh-huh.
but they are all very accessible. You know, it's all, the first floor unit is walk-in,
Mhm.
basically no step.
Mhm.
I shouldn't say that, there's a small step just to go in.
Mhm.
Other than that, that's all single floor. Same up at the kind of center unit. That's just one step, 2 steps. It will step up onto a platform, 2 steps onto a platform, and then inside the unit that would go into the garage is about a 6-inch step, just to go over the curving of the concrete.
And the new doorways that you're putting in, are they gonna be wide enough?
They're 36-inch,
Okay.
yep.
So actually but for ramping up some of those steps.
Well, ADA would be 48-inch showers, you know,
Yeah.
where we planned on 36-inch,
Mhm.
just for space, but,
Mhm.
I mean, you know, in reality, they're pretty accessible, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you wouldn't say that they're totally ADA
Right,
compliant,
right,
but,
right.
they're certainly accessible.
Okay. I don't have any questions.
I just-
right now.
I'm just gonna say, you have the rocks up here on the, so that's, everybody's happy with that?
Yeah, and I wanted to actually, I wasn't sure how far, and I was gonna talk to Bill and Deb before we actually go placing those, but how far, you know, with the rocks on the retaining wall. You know, I've got them drawn in kind of in that general area of where the driveway is right now. But I figured before we actually did that, we'd go up and look at it and say, you know, how far do you guys want us to carry that?
Yeah, that
So-
was, yeah.
You know, that kind of covers that
Unless
whole
you have more
area
you
up
need to get
there.
rid of.
Right, right, but yeah, so that's where I just drew them in, because that was kind of our point of concentration there,
Yeah.
so.
You got plenty to get rid of there,
There's
so
plenty of rock to put on the wall, yeah, yeah,
nice to get rid of it up
yeah,
there.
for sure.
Are we ready for the famous checklist?
Well, just since I wasn't here last time, David, do you wanna take the votes on this one?
Sure,
Were you here last time?
I was, yeah.
Okay, so,
Okay, so then
set up.
I'll kick you off and put you on.
Okay.
We're all okay with it?
Furstenberg?
Everybody's okay with this arrangement? All right, so let's go through the checklist. And David, you can help out with this. So, names and addresses of each abutter, legal interest holder by map and lot number,
Yep.
that's a yes.
That's a yes.
A certified mail notice list, I left that in.
Yeah,
That's
same.
okay. Names and business addresses of every engineer, et cetera,
No engineers were, other than for the septic,
okay.
and he was.
So we're okay with that? Anybody? Yes. Required approvals prior to site plan review, variance from the ZBA, no?
But we need a state driveway permit, and we need to have the state septic.
Okay, so those are,
The septic is in process right now. I've been reviewing it.
Well, but it hasn't gone to the state yet.
It's not gone to the
And
state.
it hasn't specified that it's gonna have the maze in the tank, right?
Right.
So that needs to be revised before you send it to the state, so they don't, because I think you have to pay extra to get sent to the state.
so what was the other thing, Vicky, septic and what?
And the second driveway needs a
DOT.
permit,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So I'll follow back up with Dez on that.
Okay, good. So variance, special exception, not a problem, subdivision approval from planning board. Okay, so these are all NAs, right? What'd you say? Department review and written comment, the fire department, the famous fire
The
department.
famous fire department, Mike Kinsley has visited, he's gone through your building,
Yes.
looked at everything.
He just hasn't.
He has given me a verbal okay. I have been after him to send me the written, and I will continue to be after him to
So
send me the written.
can we say, what do we say with this?
Needs
Yes,
to be
but,
submitted.
well, he's gotten the review, the problem is, and
You know, I
gotten-
could have dreamt about it too. No, we need to be, you know, we require other people to have to submit that stuff. And so even
So-
though we're among friends, you need to get.
No, but I mean, in
something.
terms, what's the what if he never submits it? I mean,
I
It
will
needs to be
absolutely-
submitted, because he's not doing his job if he doesn't submit something in writing. He can do it handwritten, he can do an email to David, he just
I
needs to
can write
submit
it and have him
something.
sign it. It's-
There's another option.
Which is probably going to be how it's gonna work.
So
Is-
that's
is-
stamped envelope.
Is Morse code accepted?
No, it needs to be something that somebody can go to the file and go, oh, yeah.
Okay.
You know, if there's any kind of problem with any
Right.
safety issue
No,
on this,
absolutely.
we've not done our job by getting our fire department to say this is okay.
So Lyme Highway Department,
Oh, do you want to set it as a condition?
yeah,
that-
condition we have to get.
That before the permit is issued, that Mike Hensley.
Well, we're gonna have a number of conditions here that all these permits have to be.
I'm trying to get it in the minutes, so I just.
Yeah, so
trying to figure
we
out
got
what
the
you want.
septic, we got the second driveway with DOT, and the fire department written approval. Okay. Got that?
Yep.
Lyme Highway Department,
It's a state highway, so it really has nothing to do with.
Not their
It's
road.
NA.
Yeah.
Police Department,
There's been nothing from the police department. I don't know if you want,
do we want anything to the police department?
Does he know about it at all?
I don't know if he does or not.
Because, who does the 911 numbering?
That'll be Don Elder, and as soon as, if this is approved, I will immediately call Don and say we're going to be adding, doing this, and I need addresses, and he will send me the addresses and do.
Right, so they need to be identified so that when emergency responders go,
Right.
they know which unit to go to.
Well, what happens, Don will decide how it's going to get numbered, and then I'll tell Morty, and Morty can do that, so it's.
Okay, so what do we wanna call that, NA
I don't know, I'm not that concerned, as long as Sean knows which unit he's gonna go to in the 911.
But in terms of what
should
we're,
get that.
I mean, I have to go through this, what do you wanna, you want an NA, a yes or a no?
What's the big deal with Sean not saying something like it's just fine, or going, oh yeah, great, there's gonna be 4 units there and not a house anymore?
I
I
can
think
ask
it's
Sean
important for our emergency service people to know that there are now gonna be 4 units.
So do you want
when they
that
respond.
conditional?
I don't really need anything in writing from him, it's more of a notification that he knows that now we're gonna have 4 units and 4,
Okay, but who's
Households.
responsible for that notification?
why don't?
I see Sean more often than you do unless
I
you
mean,
speak a lot, so.
I'm glad to do it, or.
Can you drop this off with him and let him know that we're gonna have 3 new families here, or 3
Oh,
new
absolutely.
households? And,
So who's gonna do that?
I'm going to do it.
David's gonna do it, cause it's easy. Thank you.
And I just see him far more often than you do, so.
Yeah.
So he's gonna notify Sean?
Yep, but show him the plan, just so he knows how
So,
to
all right, so what I
preserve
need to determine in this checklist is what am I doing here? NA or conditional upon David's notification, because that's not really Morty's.
I would say it's just not applicable, but.
That's what I would
I'll,
say.
Side note that,
Yeah,
and I
side
have it
note.
as one of my action items to.
You're right.
Yep.
Okay, next thing, Lyme Select Board. Well, here's somebody from the Select Board.
So the select board's only issue is, we discussed this morning, is this a change of use application at the same time as a dwelling application? 'Cause has there been a change of use application required from the time? This is a non-conforming business use, right?
A pre-existing non-conforming business use.
But that pre-existing use was not the current use.
Is that right? I don't know.
Well-
Is this a change of use?
The pre-existing use was father's construction business when he started. And to our records, there's no change of use on file.
Okay.
So I want to know how we're gonna address the requirement of a change
Well,
of use.
I would say that if the board agrees with that, then we could do 812, which addresses a change of use.
We sort of discussed this, and you said the site plan review was gonna include the business, which,
Because they are looking at the, not only, you're looking at the parking for the business.
So you're requesting that,
we just want the files to be updated so that we know that there was a change of use approved for the
Okay.
current conditions. that
so
exist.
does the board agree that there's a change of use here?
Well, what did the select board think it was before?
So, in,
just so we can.
We're going back to, our understanding is we have to go back to when zoning was approved. And when zoning was approved, this was a garage with a construction business in it, with an excavator and a truck
Trucks
and
and- right.
so forth and so on, and,
Yep.
you know, 1 or 2 employees.
No,
um,
no.
No. He's had up to 4 or 5.
At different times.
No, at one time.
Okay.
He has had 5 at one time.
Okay, well, and that's new testimony, but as far as I understood it, it was, you know, a small construction business.
Yeah,
that-
Marty and I talked about it today, and I was saying that we had 5.
Can
Okay,
And you and Donna Lera was.
I didn't even include myself in that.
okay,
It varied from time to time, but always, we've been there 30 years.
right.
And,
And the circumstances here are such, I mean, we're not trying to,
No, it's just trying to be fair,
Right.
because everybody has to, we have to make sure that everyone, you know, goes through the same filters that the regulations put out. No, because we talked about them having 5 employees at the time that the zoning was adopted, and that they had a business use, not a cottage industry, but that they actually had a business use at the time the zoning was adopted. So that's why we could feel comfortable with this business use being there with 5 employees.
so it's not a change of use is what we're looking for.
Well, the question is, okay, so we have a construction use, so what would you call this use? I mean, you know, what I do is I go to the zoning and go, okay, so what are the uses that we have? What can we call it?
Table 4.1 is the,
Right,
It's just a trucking
so.
company.
is
Well,
it
you consider
something
yourself a trucking company.
Well, I mean, we're,
Is
Mostly,
it,
other than
I mean, we do installation as well, so I mean, we're just kind of,
yeah,
it's similar to what my father used to do. He just went out with dump trucks and dug dirt. We go out with trucks, deliver fuel, and install heating systems. So I mean, it's not the
septic
same.
systems.
He installed septic systems, so it is a similar in the manner of what people are doing out of the site. We're not doing the same things as he used to do, but basically, guys get in trucks in the morning, they go out, guys get in vans in the morning, go out. You know, and then there's people in the office doing bookwork, so. It hasn't gone from being, you know, a chocolate factory to, you know, a gun factory.
If it was a
So-
chocolate factory, you could just leave it.
Maybe.
Get Willy Wonka.
so I don't see that,
So the board is not, I will tell you, you know, as we discussed it, the select board is not experts in determining when the change of use is required here. I mean, it has to do with intensity of use of the property, it has to do with, what, you know, the board, like me, I mean, I'm not really an expert at determining this, but I'm wondering, because now we are the enforcing agency. I just learned that this weekend, you know, if we're the enforcing agency, we better understand when it's necessary for us to
Yep.
require a site plan review for a change of use.
Right. Yeah, it sounds like the intensity is about the same, so that's,
I'm not saying that the like contractor business was covered in here, and I'm not exactly seeing a neat category that the current business is, but I don't know what you call it either. Well, I mean, you know, just if, not looking at this then, because we're not getting guidance, but, I mean, is it home heating, installation
Right, this is
and
what
fuel
we-
delivery?
Well, I mean, that's the
how
thing,
can
Our-
you know, what do
we can
call it?
classify it a number of different ways. We can say that it was, you know, we can say it's a trucking delivery, you know, the consistency is the trucking and delivery, right, basically.
90%.
And installation.
And
I mean, it's-
installation,
Right.
it seems like if there's anything that's changed, it's what you're,
It's what we truck and what we
what
install.
you truck.
Right.
So it's for us to determine whether that constitutes a change of use.
And can we set that, whatever we determine, I think what I'm trying to understand is, that has to be the new base, like today, as we're
Right.
doing all this. This is
Well,
the new base for
I
us.
think that whether we have a change of use or not, because this is a site plan review, we're establishing a base anyway.
Okay.
We have to say what's there now,
And define it.
and define it, so that going forward, we have something to work from.
Well, it's limited,
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, the Getty gas station, which was a number of different things,
it
Sometimes
does remind me.
simultaneously,
Yeah,
and
right.
sometimes changing over time, but,
Right.
you know.
But that was
falling into
a-
the same sort of general.
That was a
trend.
real clear case of a change of use, you know, when we did A12 and that, and that was
Right.
changing from whatever it was to office space. This is a
And what
lot
if the
more.
only thing that changes is the intensity? What if the business use stays the same, but the intensity increases? Since
Well,
it's
no,
not a
that,
change,
the
that doesn't really
intensity, if
matter.
the intensity
Yeah.
changes, I think we could, then it's like 811 or something.
You can add 500
Continuous
You can- yeah.
expansion.
Yeah,
You're allowed
there's something to
if
cover
you-
that.
It's defined how much you can.
But what we really need to determine, what the board needs to determine is whether it feels that there's enough of a change to require a change of use.
Well, I'm trying to like describe this, so this is like heating service, it's fuel delivery and heating installation.
Right.
So, that's, so if we call it that, like, okay, so say you want to put showroom in your thing. I would say that would be very different than what they've got going on now, which is basically an operation for the fuel and that, so.
So showroom in our case
Mhm.
would be a functioning heating system that heats the building that a customer could come in and take a look at. Not a retail type of,
Right.
we're selling, you know,
No, but you were
Yeah.
saying if
I'm trying
you're,
to say, okay, well.
you're saying what an example would be of
Of
a.
a clear change of use would be as if you had a retail,
Retail
Room.
changes.
yeah,
Which then required parking for people to come see
right,
your
the
site.
regular public
Right.
come in, yeah. Yeah. Kind of along with that, I mean, I would really like to see on this, the dimensions of the buildings associated with this business and the amount of area that's associated with it, like that new parking lot is all new, and, you know, there's some limitation on the expansion of a non-conforming legal use. So,
based off of lot size, correct?
That's looking at
It's
the
based on-
lot coverage. If you have commercial parking areas, they are included in the lot coverage.
right, but it's also expansion of non-conforming use, is that it's limited.
Well, that's why we want to establish
Yeah,
a
right.
baseline.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would say the baseline that would not include the new parking area, because that used to be cow pasture. But that's added in, and that's happened, you know, just like recently. So, I think we need to dial back to before that got put in and document what we have in the way of existing structures and lot coverage that's associated with it.
All right,
So the existing covered buildings are covered in the property tax.
Right, and what we need to do is put a copy of that in the file if they're up to date. I mean, there's that barn, there's
Yeah,
the
those
shop.
are all-
So those are all
Yeah.
existing structures that are on the tax rolls.
Yeah,
So, Becky, let me understand when you say you wanna look back now, because I'm understanding that we're here to
yeah,
consider a change of use and
Right.
setting the base today.
right.
So you want not to include what's being requested?
There's there's a new parking lot that got put in that was not there like, what, 3 weeks ago? I don't know how long.
Right. Well, right, no, I understand.
The one to the south,
Mhm.
where the
But
cows.
she's saying that she doesn't want to consider that as, that wasn't there, so
That was
that
part
doesn't
of
get
this.
included in the baseline.
That was
If I understand you
Right,
correctly.
Right, I think that's added on to what was the base, you know, and so these buildings, and there's a certain amount of the circulation space that was as well. Just so we can keep a tab on this, because we're supposed to, you've got a lawful non-conforming business use, may continue and may be expanded. This says by special exception of the ZBA, pursuant to 1040, provided all the other zoning requirements are met and uses expanded by not more than 50% in overall intensity with all that stuff. And then, so that's just continuing a lawful business use. And I would argue that where we're converting what was an agricultural use of part of that lot to parking lot is one of those things we need to keep track of.
I just want you to keep in mind that that agricultural space was an eyesore, to put it at best.
I understand, but you know what?
And was filled with equipment and different
Right.
items.
Right.
So there may have been
Could have
some
been.
cows in that space,
Right.
but in
It might have
reality,
been a parking
there was
lot.
more
It was.
done there than just
Well,
having some cows.
can you,
So
are you saying that it was used for parking?
I would say it was used more for parking than it was for grazing, yes.
You know,
I mean,
more
there was
than-
firewood that was stored there.
Okay.
It was really just.
So you're
kind
making
of
the
a-
case that it was a pre-existing?
I am, I mean, I do not think that that is an incorrect statement. I think if people remember that there was a lot of stuff out in that space.
Yeah, your
And it was
father had
not
equipment.
always space that
Right.
cows were
The dogs had
in.
his dozer and his backhoes out there.
Right.
Yeah.
But just.
I don't know, I just
correct
drive
me if
by
I'm
every now and
wrong,
then, so.
I don't consider parking equipment in a field a parking lot. mean,
I don't consider it a field.
Well, it wasn't a parking lot, it wasn't a driveway, it was.
There
you're
was
now
gravel
building that.
material in there, yes.
The reason Morty did this new thing is because the trucks would
Good.
sink.
Yeah,
Because
sure,
there
they're
wasn't
big
a driveway
trucks.
there.
So-
Yeah, really big
So,
trucks.
you,
Yeah.
is this,
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, I'm trying to be generous in my interpretation here because, you know, and trying to let this, you know, happen, but I wanna, you know, the main thing is that we have some documentation that will show what we're measuring from, and that's a new parking lot, and so you say that, is it 3 years old? I mean, all that new
I would
gravel
say
and-
it's
He's been working on it.
year and a half, 2 years, yeah.
Okay, and that should have had a site plan when that was started to put in. I mean, I got, you know, it's been adding to the 50% of Morty's business, or Dad's business. I don't know whose business it actually got added to, but anyway, that's part of the addition that,
that's allowed?
yeah, it wasn't, at
Could
the
be
time the
allowed.
zoning was adopted, that did not exist. That is an expansion of the business use on this lot. And so I think that needs to count toward whatever limitation we have on this ultimate size and what goes on here.
yeah, and then what I'm understanding is you're going back to that base, and then we're approving a change of use, expansion of use to this today, so that we have a new, but then I try to understand, are we adding, is it a cumulative? So this change of use to 50%, does it
Hold on,
start
hold-
again
hold on.
today?
The change, the 50% thing is, I don't,
It's really for,
That's
the
for the-
50% is assuming there is no change of use.
right,
So the construction business could have expanded 50%. That's an E11.
and that's a special exception, that's not under our purview.
That's exactly what I was reading, so.
So that's not something that, I mean, we can note certain things, but that's not, we don't make that
It
decision.
doesn't get into expansion, it just talks about the intensity, not an area or building size. But in that we are set in a residential area, I think we need to care about building size and how big the parking lot is and all that, because we're trying to be sensitive to the neighbors and what goes on in the neighborhood.
And I say something, I'm the one across the
Yeah.
street, and by expanding, letting them do that, and moving stuff out of my front window,
Mhm.
we're trying to sell our house, and,
Mhm.
you know, that's hindering the sale of our house, but
Mhm.
with letting Morty do what he wants to do is gonna help the looks of ours.
That's
And
good.
he's talking about putting a row of trees in there, which is gonna help,
Yeah,
so.
and getting that bunker out of there.
And getting the bunker out of there, so
Yep,
it's,
Yep,
So we're not trying to stand in the way, I hope you understand, we're not trying to stand in the way, but I wanna figure out how this fits into this model, so that we apply it equally
Sure.
to everybody
well,
in the
it's, you
town.
know, so who's the next person? So then Tony, you know, the Perrys are gonna come in, they've got a business use, it's been going on forever.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so when they transition to whatever they're gonna do next or expand or whatever, we need to like, just say, well, this is how we go through these changes in business use.
All right,
So I guess,
Just to be
my
fair.
understanding, Vicki, that you basically want it noted that that additional space was not there with the original footprint.
1989, you're
1989.
saying?
Yeah, I think it was, but That's
You
my
do?
opinion. Well, I've
Well,
been driving
somebody
by there
else-
for 30 years.
Yeah.
Somebody
Well,
else can
I've
tell
seen-
me whether it was there or not and how much.
It may be
Well, I just mean
upgraded,
that-
but
I
it
can tell you
was
that that
there.
road, that extra road went into a trailer, and there was living, that was a driveway at
Uh-huh.
one point.
Right.
Where his
But Morty
proposed
Senior
addition is.
had equipment parked there
Yeah.
forever.
all
So in,
So I think
I
that's,
think it's
that's what
almost
we
a
need,
parking lot.
we need to establish.
I mean, even though it wasn't as.
He's just trying to get rid of that clay and put gravel in there, so equipment
I don't
doesn't
even
sink
know
out
at
of
this
sight.
point how you do that.
Well,
How do
we,
establish
with the
that?
same way we did with Brett Ryan. We spoke to people who were contemporaneously there,
Okay.
and we relied on the testimony, you know, with the assumption that people weren't lying.
And the neighbors are the ones who probably have been watching and the
So,
transition, so we really.
I mean, Tim
honor-
has been here since the flood, and,
That's,
Since before you built the house, right?
no, that house was there before the
Well,
flood.
I'm just saying that there was equipment parked there, even though it wasn't hard-packed parking lot, it was parked there, so it was really a parking lot. I mean, it was, yeah.
So let's note that there's testimony. Who is saying that it was there and functioning in a similar way prior to zoning?
I'm
You-
a
you
neighbor.
are-
I've been there before he was there.
Okay, and obviously the Baileys are.
Yeah, I can't say the exact dimensions, but
Yeah.
Morty's truck and equipment.
And you agree?
We've been there since
Yeah.
well, I started the second grade.
No, I remember that, and you got into trouble in the first grade,
Yeah.
yes. I heard about
I
that.
mean, that's. what
He's
he's saying,
involved with that.
you know, there, that,
Okay, so there's a lot of testimony that there's a similarity, and it's up to the board. I mean, Tim obviously is convinced, but it's up to the board to, you know, is there testimony that's not true? Or, I mean, can people make the case that that's not true?
So can I understand, so if this commercial use gets expanded from today, you would come back in for an expand?
I think they'd have to go to the zoning board for, under 811
Okay, so, but what we're doing here is establishing.
baseline.
But, yeah, the original base, so that whatever restrictions or limitations of an increase will be based
We'll
on that
rely
base.
on that, and that's a good idea across the board,
Yes, I think
because otherwise we're just
that's exactly right.
in a swamp. All right, so what are we accepting this testimony? Are we not accepting this?
well, I'm willing to say, okay, it's been parked there, but there's a big difference between the muddy ruts that might have been there before and this new parking area that's all gravel and it's level, and that's quite a different thing. And,
So
know,
you feel it's,
well, and I always disagree with everybody anyway,
but that's-
so I'm just
that-
saying,
that-
I don't
you've
kinda
got-
buy it.
I would agree
So-
that
you've got two people
parking,
here.
parking
Okay,
equipment in
well-
the field is not a parking lot,
Right.
because,
Right.
I mean, you had trailers parked in your field, right?
I did.
And that's not a parking lot, we don't call that a parking lot, it's,
Okay.
you know, so the fact that there are trailers there doesn't mean it was a parking lot. I think the parking lot is what you can comfortably drive those big rigs on without sinking into the mud. And you've now fixed that, I get it, but that was not what existed in 1989.
So I guess what is the consequence of saying that that was not there? I mean, aren't we still
It's just
just
a
setting
base.
precedent here, saying that this was not here then, it is here now?
Yeah,
We just wanna make it legit.
so that it's a base.
All right, so,
Right.
So the new parking lot would be part of the 50% expansion that the existing business is allowed.
But we don't really know how much that is, right, the
That's
50.
what we're trying to do.
And the question is
you
whether the
figure out
parking lot is part of the base or part of an expansion that happens.
Is it, it's over 50% in overall intensity, if you're considering that
Right.
the 50%, is that, are you increasing the intensity by increasing the area of the parking space? You know, is that, if you have 6 trucks now, I don't know how many you have, but if you have 6 trucks now, you fix the parking area and you still have 6 trucks.
yeah, is that an increase?
Is that an increase in intensity? I don't think so.
But in
I would not.
19 but the intensity of use goes back to 1989 as well.
Yeah, so, but on the
And
assumption,
the intensity of use in 1989 was a dump truck,
There were
an
three,
excavator.
you're underestimating his business, Rusty.
Well,
mean, I think
I wasn't here, but
So
I'm.
what are you
Right.
basing your
But I mean, he
information on?
used to have 3 dump trucks, 2 excavators, a bulldozer, a loader, ran a sand pit out of Piermont. It was a substantial construction company for back in 1989.
Rusty, what are you basing your information on?
It's just the people that I've talked around in town that have said Morty was a one-man shop. He would come out and dig septic systems and.
I mean, it's,
So-
if,
The last 20 years, 15, 10 years, I guess, he was single.
After he was
Yeah.
65, he might
Yeah.
have one man
I mean,
show, but
Okay.
that was not a.
we don't have those people here tonight.
No, we
that
don't.
You spoke to.
So I don't. I'm just saying, that was what I heard.
No, and I
that
understand,
he moved
but,
off the
I
farm,
mean-
most of the construction was down wherever you lived before.
No,
you
that's
bought
not
that.
the case at all.
It
mean, I was a child
down
when-
there, right.
Well, but you, okay.
He had a backhoe when he lived
Yeah,
there
he
so
had a
far.
really big business. He paid a lot of tax.
Yeah, no, I'm not arguing that, or I'm not questioning that.
No, I didn't mean land
No.
taxes, I mean, he
No.
I
really
think
had
we
a
all
big business.
agree, we wanna get,
Right.
we wanna get this baseline here. The question is
Right, how do we do that?
determining where we're beginning. So the question of intensity of use, that's a good point, because it's not, oh, did you add, I mean, it's both things. It's a difficult issue, because I agree with Vicky's point, well, that wasn't there, as it is now. But the criteria for 811, I believe, is the increase in intensity of use. So, and it's overall, and just like with, the similar thing, you're going over all those different components, and it's not that they're not all equal. So the question for us is, does this constitute a significant figure of a change of intensity of use?
And not that, as I understand, not that we're trying to say no, we're just trying to say, okay, you've now come up to you're getting closer to the ceiling as to how much increase you can have on this property
Sure.
for commercial use. I mean, am I correct in that?
I would say so, yes.
Yes,
There has to
okay.
be some limitation, that's why it's, you're allowed to have it, but you can't expand as you.
All right, so let's
Make
make
it
it,
quantifiable stuff is like the number of employees,
Yeah, I don't think.
gallons of water.
Right, I don't think just putting the parking lot.
I think a parking lot is,
intensity use.
I mean, how do you balance that? It would have to be a 50% increase in the entire parking area space.
Right, well, honestly, the size of the trucks have like doubled. The little trucks were kind of cute. You're big, and I really am glad that the business is going great guns. But, I really see that is it's more intense use. With those
I
big
don't know
trucks.
if I would go that
And
far,
the little
honestly. Our trucks leave in the morning, our large trucks leave in the morning, they come back at night. They are not making multiple trips in and out of that parking area.
Mhm.
We have our small single axle truck that does fuel delivery. That comes out in and out multiple times a day, but that's a glorified 1-ton truck. That is not a tandem axle dump truck. There's been dump trucks hauling 20,000 ton equipment out of there the whole life of the property.
Mhm.
So I don't feel actually that the intensity has changed that much. Probably Peter can speak to that, and Deb and
He's
Bill.
got
but, I mean,
three tractor trailers, they're not,
Right.
you only got
tractor
2 drivers,
trucks.
for one thing, one drives a small truck, one drives a big one, so it ain't like all 3 are leaving that yard at all, in and out of
No,
the
so
yard every day.
I think we're actually lesser impact with what we're doing than probably what the construction business was doing in and out of there.
The size of the trucks, maybe a bigger truck, that could allow less intense use because it goes out on one trip, doesn't have to come back and forth many times.
That's
But
exactly
here's what, you
it
guys,
was.
we don't get paid to do the intensity consideration, because there's nothing here for us to talk about in terms of intensity, it's the ZBA. So, back to.
But who decides if that needs to happen?
Well, the zoning administrator can direct traffic, that way.
So
If
let's-
we feel like it needs to have a special exception, then that's something we can say.
But we just have to decide what the baseline is.
My 2 cents is that, you know, a parking lot is an improvement, it's not a use of the space. So if a parking lot's been put in, that's an improvement, that's a new parking lot. It's not how you use that area of land. The intensity of use, based on what everybody's saying, we have owners, abutters. The intensity of use, it seems like it's been pretty much constant, and I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. So who feels that this requires a special exception? Okay.
So, hold on, wait a second, and it would be because it's a lawful non-conforming use, may continue and be expanded as a special exception allowed by the ZBA for the provisions of 1040, and the
Right.
use is expanded by not more than 50% in overall intensity.
Right.
So,
So it sounds like it needs to be reviewed by the ZBA.
for me, I would say it does need a special exception, because it's an 811 type of thing.
And you're saying that because, what are you basing the?
Because it's a lawful non-conforming use.
No, we know
allowed
all
to
that.
exist.
But this is for expansion, so what are you
It's
saying?
expanding, there's a new parking lot that was built a year and a half ago, and they should have gotten a zoning permit, that's
Well,
what
that's,
it looks like to
that
me.
should, the parking lot should have gone through
Mhm.
proper channels.
Right.
What would it take now just to start from adding that on and doing the rest of the parking lot?
Just
Well, and it's
ZBA
gonna have a
authority,
new,
it gives you a special
new
exception.
driveway, yeah, it just looks like a
The
special
ZBA
exception,
would
but-
approve a special exception for
Yeah,
it.
likely.
And it's got a new curb cut here,
It's an
which,
existing curb cut.
okay, well, it's gonna be used by big trucks now. You know, I really wanna crawl under the table, because I hate to be, like, you
Well, it's
know,
too late.
saying this
It's too
stuff.
late- too late to crawl under the table.
I know, and, I just want it to be fair.
All right,
and
do
right,
you-
So we agree it's a lawful
lawful
non-conforming.
Without a
use.
doubt.
Yes.
In existence may be converted into another business use as provided that all the zoning requirements are met.
No, that's not
We're looking
even
at
what we're
11
talking.
now?
Yeah, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't want it to be a change in use.
Okay.
We're saying that the use is close enough.
Close
I
enough.
think that was the consensus, that the use was close
The
enough.
construction
Yes,
business
that's
is
all we
close
heard.
enough to the
That's all we
field
heard.
That's all
service
we heard.
business that, yeah,
Right.
that we're,
So is it mere continuation that also applies and not necessarily any expansion?
no, I think that.
Or does it have to be continuation and expansion?
No, it says and,
Yeah,
it says and.
But are we agreeing that there's not an increase in intensity since?
Well, it's not our call.
That's not our call.
it's a
Okay.
zone.
That's not our call. If we're making it a condition of approval that they get a special exception, that's just not our call.
Okay.
What were you saying?
The way this reads, it seems to imply that any lawful non-conforming use may continue as a special exception. That's,
No,
well, that's what it says.
no, any lawful
May
non-conforming
continue.
use as defined in this ordinance may continue and may be expanded as a special exception allowed pursuant to, provided all other zoning are met, and the use is expanded by not more than 50%.
I think it's only about expansion that they need to go to the zoning
Right.
board.
Okay.
From my
That's
way
what
of
it
reading
Right.
that,
That's
Right.
right.
I think the first part of the sentence gives you the right to continue a
Okay.
lawful non-conforming use.
So it really boils down to, is an extra bit of parking spot considered expansion?
Well, it needs a permit to do that,
But
right?
also.
Well, it needs a permit, but that doesn't necessarily mean
I
it's.
can give them, you know, the,
Expansion.
Driveway permit, you
I
get,
I can, well, it wouldn't be a driveway permit, it would be a permit for a parking area. I don't see an issue, doing that. I've already looked at the lot coverages, and we looked at those earlier on, and that's not gonna be a problem. And so I don't have any issue issuing a permit. I will say, as the zoning administrator, I don't consider this to be a expansion of the business. It's increasing the parking area, but I truly believe that 811 is talking about expanding a business. If you were adding employees, if you were adding a lot more trucks,
Right.
you know, if you were putting in a showroom,
Well,
that is an
I
expansion of the
think-
business.
although it's not limited to these things, I would agree with you, because it says, considering such matters as expanded by not more than 50% in overall intensity, considering such matters. Such matters doesn't limit it to these things,
Exactly.
but it does emphasize these things. So we got traffic generated, number of employees, number of shifts, volume of water, volume of sewage effluent, noise, odor, glare, vibration, dust, and smoke. From what I'm hearing, that's pretty consistent with 1989,
I hope we've lowered it.
and maybe
Yeah.
lower, yeah, so.
And again, the parking lot with bigger trucks and sewer delivery may
Maybe
reduce
lower.
the intensity.
I mean, I'd like to think that we smell better and.
We all
cause
like to
less
think that
annoyance
about
in general,
ourselves, but it's
in
rarely
general,
the
so,
truth. Um,
What, that we smell better? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, that's what I was talking about. Or we can talk about the chocolate factory. Let's, we need to make a determination about this, and,
And I think it's also clear that when we go through this exercise, I'm hoping your business booms like crazy, and you may want a showroom, and you may want,
But you'll ask them at that point.
at what point do you need to
Well,
come
no,
back?
so, and I wanna back up here, so the original intention for this plan, so let's go
Right.
way back
Right,
here,
okay, so is it-
was
okay,
to
right.
keep my parents in their house
Right.
on an ADA
but that's
compliant
opening up
space.
the
I know, I
proverbial can
opened
of
up
worms.
Pandora's box
But-
here, I know I did.
But, look, all of these things, all of the things you're doing here are things that Lyme wants.
Right.
And
We're just trying to figure out how to make it work.
And I do not see our company, if we continue to grow in that way, this is not gonna be the place that we're gonna do it. This is a means to an end for this home. Even with the 3 units, it does not cover the cost of giving my parents the equity in their property and the taxes to pay for the property. So at that point, I need to continue to do business here for some period of time to cover repairing the shop, doing these landscape work, all of the repairs required to the home, you know, we need a new roof there, we need paint. All of these things come into play. My business is what can allow me to do this. If we get to the point where we need 10 employees, 15 employees, and a huge yard for trucks, this is not gonna be where we do it. This is not,
You're gonna buy Earl Strathspey.
I don't know where we will be. Or we would have a limited amount of work going out of here, and we will have other facilities. So this is not a plan of, you know, intensity here, because it's a good place for us to do business, but it's not, I will be the first to say, it is not totally ideal with what we do. We can get trucks in and out. It's not a big, wide, open, huge parking area to do that. So it's not our intention to make this our forever home necessarily, or we may be out of business in 2 years. I don't know, that's business. But I do know that this up here is important for me. This down here is important for me. I just wanna make the two mesh however I can and keep my intention of making it so my parents can stay where they are. That's my big.
So it sounds to me like everything that we're focusing on here is whether or not this parking area constitutes enough of a change of intensity of use, and it sounds like it's not clear, right?
I don't think it does.
Well, I think from my perspective, and I think from the conversations at the board this morning, if we have a permit, if all permits are in line, if we have a drive, which we just didn't have, if we have a driveway permit in place, we've dotted our
Then you feel comfortable with
I's
it.
and crossed our T's.
If the planning board approves this site plan,
Yeah.
then, you know, like I said, I can issue a permit that will include the driveway, the new driveway going up to the house.
Right.
You know, basically say this is now, and this sets a baseline
And-
from now, and if you need to expand your business from now on, this, site plan is
Right.
going to be the.
This is the avenue that we go down, correct?
That's right.
We come back to the planning board and
And it
say,
will be,
this is what we need, and the planning board says, yes.
if you need to
no.
expand by up to 50%, you're gonna have to go to the zoning board first,
Sure.
get a special exception.
Uh,
At least this sets
I don't,
a-
I don't, speaking for myself, I don't feel like I have enough to make me feel like I can be clear about saying this needs a special exception. If the rest of the board, feels strongly about that, I am convincible to come around to it, if there's enough reason for it. But I understand that it comes under consideration, but I think we can go through this site plan review, we can set the baseline, because I don't, based on the criteria here, even though the parking area was put in questionably, is a good way to put it, I think we can establish the baseline, and that's not really materially an expansion. So, can I get agreement on that or disagreement? And obviously it doesn't have to be unanimous, I don't think it will be. So, somebody like to,
Okay, so just the question is whether or not this is zoning compliant.
is that the question, or do we want a specific question about?
Well, I don't know, what are other zoning things?
Well, I think the other thing, do we feel that this requires review by the zoning board under 811?
Oh, I thought that's what we were talking about.
That is what we were talking
Oh,
about.
okay.
But it's
But
specific as
anything
opposed to
else?
just saying.
No, anything else, are there other zoning issues?
Oh, I
like-
don't know.
Like having two businesses on a lot, is that a problem?
Well, it's a pre-existing non-conforming lot. Those have been there since 1989.
Well, it was an apartment, it was a house, a family home with a business, and now it's an apartment. So
You mean-
I'm just throwing it out there, so we
Okay,
can
so-
be really clear about.
So what do
all
you
the-
think, what do you think?
I don't know, it's like, I don't.
I would say
interpret
that
this
under
ordinance, I really-
4.46, you
Uh-huh.
you do a conversion.
And that's okay to have both of those things then on the lot.
I look at it at 4.41.
Okay.
It says there shall be only one principal building and one principal activity on the lot unless otherwise approved under lot size averaging, the multi-dwelling conversion, or the planned development.
And
So,
in this case, it's a multi-dwelling
right, the
conversion.
multi-dwelling conversion
Okay,
says to me that, in reading that allows for more than one use on the lot.
well, and how do you get the one use?
Because that's what it says. 4.41.
One principal activity.
Unless otherwise approved under the other provisions.
Okay, they haven't been approved under the other provisions, that's so.
But that's what we're doing.
Okay, but these are zoning provisions, these are not site plan provisions.
But we have to be consistent with the zoning ordinance.
Right, I'm just trying to make sure that all the use things are consistent, and that's why I brought that up, but I'm not, and that was just that, I tried to address it.
So I guess my question then is,
So I just wanna know about that, is that okay?
well, what do you think?
I don't know,
My interpretation is that it is.
Okay, all right,
Gladly put that in the minutes, that
okay, yeah, I do, I want you to put that in a minute. Okay.
I'll take that one on.
So that we don't forget, so if we go back, well, what happened with the, that one, and so that we have it in there, David determined that it was okay.
Okay, so we're
conversion,
blaming
but
everything on
not-
David.
Oh,
because
that's
he's the
common,
zoning-
yeah.
He does
Common.
zoning interpretation, you
It's his
don't,
job.
okay, so that's what I wanna hear, is that it's okay, and that, he's good with 811 also, that would make me feel good,
I am perfectly fine. My
okay.
belief that 811 is only talking about an expansion of the business, adding more business,
Well,
which could
more
be
intense.
more trucks, more employees. An addition to a parking lot, to me, does not constitute an expansion of a business. It just does not seem reasonable to me. The idea behind 811 is saying you have a pre-existing non-conforming business, you wanna make it larger, and
More employees.
more employees, more, you know,
More
more
water
use, more
usage.
people coming in and out, that type of thing. You may increase your parking for that, but increasing the parking for an existing non-conforming business, other than needed a permit, other than the permit.
Yeah, we're not gonna let you forget that.
It's actually his dad.
Well,
Not
he's
gonna
taking
let
a lot
him
of,
forget it.
taking a lot of heat for his
He's the
dad.
one coming for the.
Yes,
site
that's
plan.
why I'm pointing it.
Okay, so we can move on.
All right, yes, so let's move on.
We agree on that.
We have, unless anybody on the, or enough people on the board want to disagree with David, and David's a big guy, I wouldn't recommend it. We can move on.
Well, that's his decision, he made it, so. David,
He speaks for the board.
yeah.
I don't speak for the
No,
board.
no, he doesn't speak for the board.
To be very clear on that, I do not speak
No,
for the
he's the
board.
administrator, the board can overrule him.
Right.
So the board has the right to overrule him.
And if you don't like it, you can go to the zoning board and have me overruled also.
Right.
Also, so
Right.
there's plenty of ways.
There's plenty of ways to
Plenty of ways to
overrule.
overrule.
So, are there enough people on the board who feel differently? Or are there any people on the board who feel differently? Or are people just too unclear to feel differently? Okay, but that's a fair, yeah, I mean, and I think if there's lack of clarity, it's a good thing to have somebody to rely on for guidance, and that's what we're doing here.
Right.
All right, well, that was easy. Shall we get back to, I knew as we were going down this list, we were gonna find something. All right, so we got the Lyme Select Board, that's how it all started. So Lyme Select Board, is the Lyme Select Board okay? I mean, now, is this a yes?
I think you've answered my questions so far, and
So
we're
I can-
relying on David, and I guess we
I can put
can
yes?
review David's determination if we need to.
Okay.
You can probably overrule it.
Yeah.
You can't overrule it, you have to go to the zoning board to
To
overrule
overrule
it.
it.
Okay, all right.
And I can make that appointment for you.
I know.
All right, Conservation
Of July
Commission,
2024.
I think we can waive the conservation
NA?
commission, but not
Okay.
applicable. Yep.
okay, School District,
Nope.
NA.
You might wanna just note that Morty has said that the intent is for small apartments that most likely will not have children.
You're gonna have to bump up if they do.
One bedroom.
People in
we've seen it
straits
happen.
will.
No, I
do
mean,
that,
people,
so-
yeah, no, that's,
Especially if they wanna come to Lyme and.
No, I mean,
put
that's-
kids in
that's-
the school, so of
that
course
is
they
true.
will.
I don't think that there's a guarantee that you won't have, you know, children.
Yeah.
But does that mean that we have to do anything with the school district? And what if they did have children?
There's
Nothing-
nothing the school district can do about it,
Right.
so
So-
other than saying, we don't want it, and
Yeah, that's, okay. So, narrative summary of proposal, proposed use and associated building area for each use. Do we have that?
Can we have that documented? Just, you'll put the tax card in
Yep,
here
I've already
that
have a note to
shows
put the
what
tax card
the
in.
shop and the barn,
Yep.
and can you dimension the parking lot and all that now?
Sure, we can.
too? Okay, great.
Okay, so what are you asking for?
Just,
Tax card?
well, tax card for the structures,
Right.
and then to understand what the extent of the improved area is. So,
Extent of improved area.
so that we've got, driveways and parking that amount to, a certain amount of square footage, and we just want that documented.
Are you saying he has to stop where he is now, or can he finish the parking?
Well, he's gonna get a permit.
Okay.
it will get a permit for the rest of the parking area and go backwards and include it in the, after the fact for the, which is, I have done so many after the fact permits for people that do things and then get the approval afterwards.
Oh,
It's far better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Yeah.
We didn't say that in public meeting, did we?
It's being
Rich has
broadcast
it on-
all over town.
That's on, you guys
I
got
know.
to, you guys
That
got
is
to,
Not a good way
we can't
to
do
have
that.
regulations.
I don't give those out.
Okay, days and hours of operation, and this, yeah, so here's where we can establish some baseline here. Days and hours of operation, number of employees, the extent of normal customer business traffic, include truck deliveries. Now, do we have that information? Yeah, we need that delineated, days of hours of operation, number of employees, and in your case, really, you wanna establish the number of employees, were we still going back to 1989 here, or what? Or
There
are we-
would be,
Shouldn't be more.
Shouldn't be more than
Right.
what you had in
Right.
'89.
all the testimony we've had is that there were
Certainly
more than
five.
five. So-
You can establish the exact number, but you have to really make a convincing case that it's whatever it is.
If you include me, and actually, I was an unpaid employee, that's six. Liz is like,
If you live there, right?
that's true.
More
Yeah.
than those.
Yeah, what does that matter?
Yeah.
Employees in the business.
He's a-
I could have drawn,
I mean, I'm a sole proprietor and I live in my home.
Probably your own business,
Yeah.
because you don't have other employees. All right,
So just to make sure I'm clear on
what
what
number
you need
is it?
from me. Excuse me.
I'm talking-
Hours of operation,
You want days and hours of operation.
days and hours.
Number of employees, I mean, you can't just say we had 10.
And so we're going back, this is previous?
That's
I just
what-
wanna make sure I'm,
No, this is our baseline.
Yeah,
It would
but-
be based,
so
it
this would be
best-
current as
It
of.
would be best if you could document that, which
Okay.
unfortunately,
yeah,
as I understand it,
you got tech-
when zoning was, we did not do that. We don't
Right.
have those
No,
documents, so.
not remote.
So we're making a baseline here, so you want what we're doing as of
Well,
Now.
I guess that's worth discussing. I mean, I think this is a continued use, so we're assuming that what you're doing now is not, is not materially, different overall from what
Right.
you were doing before. So I think the linkage, I would say the linkage exists, doesn't
I
it?
think it would be best for the file,
Yeah.
just for you and protection of all
Yeah.
the concerned, that if you could document in the best way, some sort of statement as to what conditions were and.
And you have witnesses and.
And then
shouldn't
what
be-
they are today.
prior to zoning?
No.
Or
well,
just
Just
of
at
zoning.
zoning.
at,
zoning.
okay.
Right, I mean, you're not gonna get exact.
1989.
89.
And it's just your
March
statement.
1989.
At 6 o'clock.
That'll be about 7:00 PM when the polls close.
Right.
Yeah, so that just establishes something, I think, as much to protect you in the future on this
Sure.
property as anybody, but it gives you that base. And then you're gonna tell us today how many employees,
Right.
and
And so, just so I'm clear here, when we spoke at the first meeting, we were talking no more than 8 employees, and is that because we were talking about there have been 4 in the past? So
No,
is this part of the 50%?
way, that's
I'm just trying to-
if you wanted to expand.
Right,
Yeah.
And also, I have to clarify something I think I got wrong. I said when you had a half, it automatically goes up, but I went and looked, and it's really at the discretion
Okay.
of the board. But you conceivably, if you had 5, you could conceivably get a determination from the zoning board under 811 that you could go up to 8.
three more.
Yeah,
3 more.
You could go up to
That's
8
a
from the
50%.
5.
Because 8 is the maximum,
No,
No.
50% increase.
50%, and so now we're trying to find the base of what that would have been.
That's right.
Yeah, if you had 4, then you could go to 6,
Right, I see where you're
Yeah.
coming from. Yeah, okay.
because that's what it says in here.
But that's as of now. I mean, that's the baseline today.
Yeah, but we're linking that back
Right,
to.
we're linking it, but
So
it's
that
the
you can
baseline.
have a continuation of it on.
And if
on
you,
use.
and it doesn't say you can't do it, you just need to get permission.
No, I see what you're
Okay,
saying,
so
totally.
the.
Just wanted to make sure I
so-
was
So here are the,
understanding where I should go back.
here are the things, days and hours of operation,
Mhm.
number of employees, the extent of normal customer/business traffic, so it would be business traffic mostly, including truck deliveries. So, once we have those, we have baseline.
Okay.
Okay,
So I'll just provide those to David.
Right.
Okay.
Just, do you do emergency deliveries on Saturdays and Sundays?
We do if we have to,
So
but
sh-
it's pretty rare, so, but we'll
All
include
that
that.
stuff should be.
Actually, yeah,
In there.
occasional emergency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We really
Because
try.
we want, we want you to be able to do that on Sundays. You know.
I'm the on-call guy, so.
All right, we only have 35 pages left to go, so let's move along. Need for utility services by type, is that shown? Or is
Well,
that
there's a new
necessary?
leach field, he's already got the well, and the well, he said was good last time. And,
Somebody came.
he said there was no need to upgrade power. His phone service come in and they just, the phone lines are all the same?
Yeah, yep, so the phone lines travel up to the house, we'll have to, do whatever
Yeah.
is necessary with the phone company to update that, but, my
so
guess
yeah.
is now nobody even,
Uses the
a few of us have landlines, but not many,
Oh, well, it
so.
all depends if you have coverage there, right?
Yeah,
So-
absolutely.
So are we saying yes?
But for Wi-Fi, they
Yeah.
maybe.
Is this a yes?
People wanna have internet?
Utility services.
Or not?
I don't know where the utility line runs.
Oh, I'm sorry, I should have, the utility line runs from the shop up
Uh-huh.
to the house.
All right, so do you wanna have that added?
If you can just broaden
Okay.
in so we know where it goes.
Add utility, which line?
It's an electric line.
Add electric line.
From the shop to the house.
And you have a pole like right outside of the shop or something?
Pole is down, actually, by where that sand bunker
Oh, okay.
is currently.
Okay.
Is that
Okay.
shown?
It is not
No,
shown.
we want that to be gone, that's.
Oh, you want it
not
gone,
approved plan,
okay.
that's
But you don't
not
care
right.
to see where the pole is there, correct?
I
you
don't
do-
need to show
okay.
that.
Okay. Lot size, building footprint, gross floor area, lot coverage calculations, including conservation district mapping and reductions based on Lyme zoning orders. So we know that it's all in the rural district, right?
You're gonna put dimensions on that, you said earlier.
I'm gonna include the tax cards that have all the building
Right.
sizes.
Okay, so we
And
got.
I'm also gonna go out and measure the parking areas and put those dimensions on, or at least I'll draw up a drawing with the dimensions.
So this is a yes? Are we saying this is a yes?
It
With the
will-
tax card and what are you doing? You're doing,
The parking area, just to, I got the little wheel I can walk out with it. Get that done
They
first.
will measure the parking area.
okay. Other information requested by the planning board to assist in reviewing the application. Well, we wanted the site plan review and, oh, well, I guess here we should note the agreement that was reached at the site, which would be, the wall, which is noted on the wall, rock wall, stone wall, being added at request, along boundary line. At request of Reeves,
And also the redo's gotta be no more digging, that the digging was
I'm
done.
digging up there some,
All right, I'll put that in.
No more digging.
And no more digging.
Dangerous to own a piece of equipment.
No more digging. The digging is done. All right,
Is this agreement including some, do we need any kind of setback from the 35-foot setback, or was there some?
For the
Did you
driveway.
measure the, yeah, well, there was some concern at the meeting last time.
The driveway is 9 feet from the property line.
Oh.
And the zoning allows, it says where possible, you can't put it in the setback unless there is no other alternative. And the board looked at this and said, really, there is no other alternative to put it. But then, just put it up behind, there's a stone wall that, or used to be a stone wall where the property line is. He's going to take a lot of the excess stone and just place it along that wall to kind of build it up so that there is a little bit of a buffer. Anyone pulling in, the lights will hit the wall, not through the woods. And so that's the agreement, so that,
okay. Site plan general map, so we have a general map. Reference to a perimeter boundary survey by a New Hampshire licensed land surveyor, including meets and bounds in the lot area. A new survey may be required if deemed necessary by the planning board.
Can waive that.
I
And,
think the neighbors did the survey, that's important to know about.
Right,
On
on
that
one
property
side.
line.
I would
On one side.
recommend the board waive that because of the re-survey showing,
okay,
so that property line was established. The rest of it's not near any of the other property lines.
okay, so the Reeves survey established property line.
And I told Bill and Deb if there's costs that we can absorb on that, we're glad to do that, and that offer stands, so.
Okay, but that's very nice, okay.
Okay.
That's all
Anyway, I'm really glad you all could work that out. All right, a tax map and lot numbers, names and street addresses of the owners of record of properties within 200 feet of the subject property is shown on the town record.
Yep. That's also, turns out to be the notice list.
Okay. A location map shown as an inset on the site plan which shall show the proposed development in relation to roads in the vicinity, bodies of water or other
We
land.
waive that,
Okay, and we're waiving that because we're not,
because it's,
not relevant.
we all know what this is.
Okay. North Point graphic scale, date of preparation and dates of any revision.
No, it doesn't have a graphic scale, but it's got a scale, so I waive the graphic scale.
Graphic scale waived.
I don't even know why that's required.
Because when you use a copying machine and you
Oh, but I
make
guess,
it
yeah.
go
that-
like that, if you have the graphic scale, you can still tell what the, distances are, dimensions are.
Okay, zoning districts, including their lines of demarcation, we know it's all in the,
Rural.
All of them. I think that was in his narrative.
right. And the seal of any professional or firm preparing the site,
You stamped that, right? Somewhere.
got your autograph on
I
there.
also
Okay,
think the tax cards are in the narrative.
town of Lyme, what's that?
Tax card is also, I didn't have my copy with me, but I was looking at.
Oh,
David's,
right,
and
yeah,
The
yeah.
tax card is in the,
Right. That's true. But, so,
no, it will be in the folder anyway, because I had
Okay.
a copy of the
Okay.
original application goes.
Town of Lyme conservation districts is defined by the Lyme zoning ordinance, including any existing streams or wetlands, marsh, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Say that again?
Is there any there with regard to this?
The location, area, and dimensions of all existing and proposed buildings, driveways, anybody? Sidewalks, parking spaces, loading areas, all of that stuff, so is that on, everything's on there, that we, is that a yes?
We need it.
Yeah, I think it's a yes.
Okay, anybody feel it isn't a yes? Okay. Existing and proposed utilities, underground utilities are encouraged whenever possible, showing location of and provisions for either private or municipal what?
So he's gonna draw in the power line.
Okay, so is that a yes?
Mhm.
He's gonna add
Yep, there's a note on there.
Add in power lines. Okay, fresh water supply, including necessary water supply for fire protection. That's,
Supposedly Hensley would comment on
Right.
whether or not there's.
So I'll just put
necessary
in-
fire protection.
I'll put in yes and Michael Hensley.
I will make sure that he addresses that.
All right, sewage disposal system.
Yes, we
That's
have,
coming along.
Yeah,
and a new plan is in the works.
okay. So we're good with that.
Yep.
Electrical lines and equipment.
It's gonna show it.
Okay. Exterior lighting and all signs, especially lighted signs, we have those. Right.
Okay, well, the sign isn't gonna be lit, correct?
I don't see a need for it to
No,
be.
I don't see either. So,
No.
okay, so no lit sign, and then
Okay.
he's got his 1, 2, 3, 4 lights. I'm hoping that the select board takes note that there are 4 lights here, all shielded, downcast.
We actually have a fifth with a
Fifth?
bollard on the walkway.
Well, the soffit one, oh, no, this, I had 1, 2, 3, 4.
So 4 on the building, and then at the first floor walkway.
Got that one.
plan on
The
doing that.
walkway up.
Oh, I see, oh, so, sorry, yeah, okay, so 5.
5
lights.
downcast lights.
All right,
Did that include the one on our walkway?
Yes.
Okay.
And the other, there is a
5 lights.
size restriction, I think, on your sign.
So,
You know, I mean, it's,
I think
David can
David and
tell
I
you that
discussed that, and I think it was somewhat up to the purview of the planning
Or
board,
the,
if I
the
understand.
maximum would be a, 4 square feet per side, or I'm sorry, 16 square, 4 by 4.
4 by 4, right?
16 square feet per side, but during site plan review, if the board feels that it can be larger, then they can allow a larger sign.
Do you want it, do you need it larger than that?
Okay. Then you can't have it.
You don't wanna see it from I-91?
No. I want David to see it from his house. and-
Okay, 4 by
Gotta take
4.
some trees down for me to see it from my house.
4 by 4 maximum unlit sign.
Although I think you can see my floodlights from your house,
Sign-
your parents'
sign
house.
has to be at the shop.
Seriously?
There are lights
Yeah, I
that
think
are
my,
talking about
I have
the
floodlights on my
around the
shed
shop.
that
Yeah,
are not
yeah,
cut off,
I mean,
that,
I think that, so, Vicky,
I live on
Yes.
244.
I mean, ask the question out
Okay,
loud.
so I'm curious to know, since we're asking about the sign, which has to do with the business and not the, are we gonna delineate where the lights are on the business as well, the shop? There's lights on the shop, right?
There are lights on the shop.
Can we just highlight where they are? So-
Sure.
Okay, so you wanna add
I mean, wherever they are,
add-
just point them out.
lights to the business.
That way, if you add a light, nobody can, or if you don't, somebody doesn't complain you added a light. Maybe you fix the light bulb, but somebody's gonna think it's a new light.
All right, so, you got that, we're gonna add lights to the business. So, phone, cable, and communication lines.
They travel in the same path as the electrical, so I guess
So you can just
we'll just
add that to.
draw that in and label it. as well.
Okay, that was electric. David, I apologize for my handwriting again. Fuel storage, distribution lines, and equipment.
There is a buried propane tank that will be coming out, because it's not adequate to, service the building. And of course, there's no new tanks there now, so I'm not quite sure.
You said
Still,
that
I would,
You're gonna use pellets to heat it, and
pellets
that's
are
inside.
inside storage, so I'm a little unsure of, I can draw in some propane tanks, but I think until the gas company came to
Okay.
Are you gonna put them back in? Or-
underground,
Yeah, what do you mean?
no, it'd be above ground.
It's for the event, it's for the cooking.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Cooking only.
Right, so it would just be a couple of,
So why is the in-ground not adequate?
Well, it's a small in-ground and the valves are out of compliance.
I see.
on it.
So
So
they
it's,
told you you need to replace it.
it's owned, my parents own the tank. So, right, there's only one company that will actually deliver to that tank right now because the valves are out of code.
So you're gonna have 4 separate propane tanks?
No,
You'll
that'd
have
be forced.
one big one?
It will, that's up to the gas company, I
Okay,
can't.
so you'll have one, and you don't know where it's gonna be located?
I know where I would like it located, but I think that's still up to the purview of the gas company, not myself.
Yeah, they have to be
It'll
able to
also
get
be
to
a
it.
matter up to the size, if it gets to a certain size, you're gonna have to be
Separated
moving, separated from the
building,
house,
well,
so.
it is anyway.
Right,
So I would like to see that screen.
Okay, so likely, and that's no problem. My feeling is that they'll end up on the gable end of, what is currently the garage.
Right.
That's my,
To the side of that door.
exactly.
Yeah, that would
Um,
make sense.
So I think in that would be a simple place to screen in
And access it.
and access for the delivery and,
So it would be behind what?
You over here,
The cable.
near the
Uh-huh.
near the parking,
Behind gable end?
Yeah.
on the gable end of,
right here.
on the
On gable.
east side of
No,
the house.
on the gable.
So if that, I mean, you're gonna need to have bollards or something there if it's in. the
Right, and I was
area,
just looking at that too, that, we'll
Yeah.
probably have to put a bollard in there to
at least nice one.
keep that,
But,
right.
so is that gonna make it so that you won't be able to fit two parking spots?
Well, I've got that
there?
in there pretty deep, you know, I don't think those parking spaces will actually go that far back in there, so. The way I have it drawn, it's kind of back at the back edge of the house, when I think in reality, they'll be out further.
Well, I think that the person who, has the end unit is definitely gonna wanna park right there.
Absolutely,
Because
I just
it's the
don't know, I
shortest
mean,
distance,
it's 24 feet
yeah,
deep, so I don't think they're probably gonna drive all the way to the back
Right,
edge,
right,
so,
right,
yeah. So we can have a curbing in there and then a bollard in front of the,
right,
front of the tape.
right, so you still could fit two in there.
Yeah.
Okay, air conditioning, including cooling towers.
No,
Good.
no central
NA.
air conditioning.
Fire protection and response plan to be approved by.
Can you make sure that Inslee is good with that fire protection response plan? I mean, he's essentially gonna have to say how we fight a fire here, that's his thing, but that's included in your letter that he signs or whatever.
Yep.
So it's source of water as well as the fire protection response plan.
Rights of way and traveled surface of all fronting streets.
Intro through 10.
Okay, are we good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, page 3, home stretch. Landscaping plan, including buffering plans along adjacent properties and public highways, such plan to include consideration of surrounding land uses. So, okay, you got the wall, you have, where's the new one? Sorry, here you go. So you're showing something out front, landscape screening.
So does each one of the dots, is that conceptual, or is that you didn't plant that many stems, all the circles?
It's conceptual.
It's conceptual, okay. So what I wanna be sure of is
Sure.
that the neighbors across the street are feeling good about the density of the planting.
I'll,
And I don't wanna have plants that are gonna be planted too close
Sure.
together, that are gonna grow into each other and not be healthy plants. I mean, obviously, we want them to be able to mature.
I think I'll do, we'll do our best to maybe instead of doing a hedgerow, do some offset there. So, we get some growth behind and in front and
Yep,
make that work. I saw Joe Longacre just recently, and he said with the sale of their business, Gardner Supply did not purchase some of his conifers that have grown up larger. So he may have some actual availability of some plants to put in there. So, yeah, so when I talked to Joe about it, he said, I've got some stuff for you, so.
okay. So, when do you think that those plants would be installed?
Well, I mean, I guess my grand scheme is to get everything all cleaned up first, and,
Yep.
I'm trying to kind of
Finish the
get back
front.
to a clean slate, and then,
Right.
start to work towards having that done. I mean, my intention to have, my goal is before fall to have the units available, and I'm not gonna, put anything, out there until I have the property looking the way that I'd like it to
All right,
look.
so, I know that your focus is gonna be on getting these things all done and cash flow being what it is. And then it is December 15th and it's impossible to plant.
Sure.
So, what's realistic? I mean, honestly, I just wanna make it
Yeah.
work for you and be realistic
I
and
mean,
have the plans
to be honest with
live.
you, it sounds like Joe has stuff that he needs to
Unload now.
unload now, so,
Uh-huh.
one nice thing about having big, heavy equipment is you can
Right.
make quick work of putting things in the ground,
Right.
so, I don't see that being a big issue. I wanna get it done for Pat and Peter,
Yeah.
related to their property,
Mhm.
and, so I don't see that being, certainly last on our agenda, so.
Okay. So would you have those bushes, or trees or whatever you're gonna put in, installed by, like, somebody like Joe, or are you gonna do that?
I would probably have Joe, take a look at what we're looking to do and then advise what he has, or if what he has is not
Right.
suitable,
Right.
see what his recommendation would be.
Because, the worst that can happen is that you have all these lovely things that don't get watered and cared for.
Sure.
And so, if you can be sure to ask whoever the professional is that's advising you what the watering schedule should be,
Mhm.
so that they don't die
Sure.
in year one and maybe not even year two. It just takes, new stuff takes like repeated watering, maybe twice a
Right.
week, depending on
So
what the temperatures are.
what we're saying here is that this landscaping plan is an ongoing requirement. If the plants died, that's,
need to be
they need to be replaced.
Yes.
What about Salisbury conifers,
It's not good, I mean,
pushback, snow pushback from the road?
Yeah,
Yeah, they might be out, you'll have them out of the
Yeah, so there's a
State
pretty
collapse.
nice
Pretty deep.
wide green space
Yep.
between the ditch and the power company, so, we're ditch to ditch there, so I'm not concerned about speaking with DOT as much, because we don't wanna have them out encroaching vision,
Yep.
coming in and out.
Yep.
I will probably run it by the power company, or the telephone company, whoever owns the lines there, just to make sure that we're not,
And roadside mowing, whatever they,
whatever it is, so.
They don't-
But there's a nice wide strip,
No,
I looked at
no,
it today.
I was
where,
impressed that.
I think we can actually keep some green space on the ditch side
Yes,
and on our parking
Yeah, the-
side,
further, yeah.
yeah.
But, I was able, cause I have I have a paved road right in front of my house that has a lot of spray and
Sure.
salt, and so I went to both Longacres and Brown and asked them to give me salt tolerant
Mhm.
plants. And, so, looks like so far everybody's lived, and that would be the way to go, just so that you have some longevity, and so we don't have to
Absolutely.
complain about these plants dying. But I almost, it really, water the heck out of them so that they live, because it's an investment putting them in,
Yeah,
and,
no doubt.
plant materials are expensive. And, the benefit is, once they get established, that they'll be just on their own, but the first 2 years is really care.
okay? We got that set?
Yep.
Or, okay. Existing and proposed grades, drainage systems, structures, and topographic contours at intervals not exceeding 2 feet and extending 200 feet beyond the site plan boundary when possible.
I don't think we need that,
NA?
not applicable.
Existing and proposed method of handling water runoff.
Well, there's a lot of, it's all surface, he doesn't have any drains that I saw, and, it seems like there's enough, like pervious, like grass along that to accommodate, all the snow melt and, runoff. I don't think Route 10, the parking lot is, there's enough green around that it's not gonna shed. I mean, it's a gravel lot, but that it's technically not pervious at the end of it. So I don't really think that we need to have any special drainage. The only thing I cared about was that the snow, I mean, I couldn't see over the boulders to look down to where the leach field is, and that you don't wanna toss snow onto the leach field. But this isn't to scale, so
Okay.
it's no problem.
Yeah.
Well, just in my memory of the end of the driveway, there was probably 25, maybe 30 feet before it dropped off to go down.
I couldn't see over the boulders, so
Right,
there's.
so, but there was plenty of distance
Yeah.
for any snow to be piled and to melt in before it goes down there.
All right, direction of flow of the runoff through the use of arrows.
We've done that. I liked the other version better, but he's done it. I kinda knew what it was and.
Sorry.
Confirmed, no, the other one was
I
better.
really like the old version.
Yeah, I know, but that's okay.
It was
It's the same
vintage.
thing,
My,
yeah.
my second grade drawing here is not.
Oh, it works fine. I mean, all we wanna do is, we asked for arrows, so.
Okay, location, elevation, and size of all catch basins, dry wells, drainage ditches, swales, retention basins, storm sewers, culverts, and manholes.
He's got drainage on the sides, and I don't think we need to know the dimensions.
So is this an NA?
The NA,
You know where the culverts are under.
All right, engineering calculations used to determine drainage requirements, et cetera, et cetera.
For this.
NA?
Is that a catch basin, honey, down by the barn?
No. No, that's just a drainage ditch, that's it.
Okay, building layout plan scale, 1 to 20, is that what you have?
Yep. Kind
Shape, size, dimensions, elevation, and location of existing and proposed structures of the property.
Well, we went out and saw it, I don't really, we take a picture, I don't really think, the massing of the building's not gonna change.
Yeah, it's to say nothing's changing.
Right,
Those
so
parts
I
are-
don't think we need that.
Okay.
David's gonna put the sizes in.
Right, for the footprints.
Okay, showing conceptual plans and elevations of all proposed structures on the site and a breakdown of the floor area and proposed uses.
Well, from the tax card, we should see what's residential and what's the business, right? For the structures?
Yeah.
That'll solve that,
So you're
So it's
saying,
coming.
so
coming.
to come, tax cards.
Well, tax card, and then David's gonna measure the parking lot, right?
Yep.
DR measurements. Okay. Federal, state, and local approvals.
It'd be just the DOT and the septic.
And they're to come.
There we go.
Okay.
And then kind of like the fire department for local.
Okey-doke. Copies of all required federal, state, and local permits and approvals with or without special conditions and or stipulations.
We just don't do that.
So, all right, did it twice. Additional information. The board may require such additional information as it deems necessary in order to evaluate the proposal. Does anybody have any additional information that they'd like?
No.
You're the resident, you're living there.
Okay, so, we've got this, this is one of the more wordy, site plan review checklists, so, how do we phrase this? It's complete, or conditionally complete,
Well, I feel like I have enough information to go forward. I think that there's some outstanding submission items.
yeah, so how do we phrase, our approval of this checklist?
Approval contingent on
On
getting what we
Submission
need.
of-
Yeah.
the,
Well, I would just say that that it's, the application is complete with the,
with the provisos
That-
indicated on the checklist.
right, that there's some more information that just needs to be supplied for some more documentation to be supplied.
All right, so let's get the wording correct. We're making, or I'm making a motion that the application is complete with a proviso that the submissions and requirements shown on the checklist are met. You got that?
Well, can you, the last, after the provisos.
The provisos and requirements listed on the checklist are met.
Got it.
Is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, we've got, that's one thing. Okay, so now we're going back to 446, or to the conversion, right? We have to address the conversion.
I don't think we have a conversion. I think we said that it's not another business use, it's the same use.
The house,
No, but the house.
Oh, the house, okay, the house conversion.
That's
Okay.
why they came here originally.
No.
So now we're back to where we started.
Okay,
And do people have questions about the conversion? I mean, if we go through the structures,
more than 5 years old.
more than 5 years old, we're doing site plan review,
Right,
served by a driveway that conforms to the standards contained in section 453.
so does the grade not exceed 11%?
It'd be over 100 feet, so I believe it does.
Well, no, we have to say it does. The total length of the driveway does not exceed 1,000 feet
Now that's, is that,
without
That would be it.
that emergency vehicle. Or if it exceeds.
It's probably
I mean,
not.
I think there's plenty of, if it was over 1,000 feet, there's plenty of area where you can pull off though. And it's design and construction using methods for LID. Yeah, there are no concentrated flows, so I'm good with that. Driveway shall not be constructed in the side or rear setback. Unless, yeah, and it's not, and there's suitable areas for snow storage. Curb cuts, we're waiting for the state, to give us our state permit, and zoning permit for the driveway is also coming. Well, for all the driveways. Is it just gonna be one driveway big permit, like for this new one here and this one here?
I would just do a permit for the whole project and include specific items on the permit.
Yep, okay, and, not served, structures are located within 1,000 feet of the road, and the grades within switchbacks does not exceed 5%, none of those, so we're good with the grades not exceeding 11% for more than 100 feet?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay, so that's C,
Yeah.
we doing C?
so we did, yeah, the driveways are good.
And then
C.
D,
D, yes, we've
Buildings,
got
yeah.
adequate off-street parking. You know, in an ideal world, I would have like given, I don't know, the two units on the end are so small, I don't think they're gonna have like 3 different people, you know, driving who might live there, so. The parking is a little bit imbalanced with the 3 down here and then with, you know, the 3 up here, but I'm fine with how it is, and all the loading on the site.
okay,
They've got plenty of access to their doorways and things.
so you're okay with that?
Yep, and for the propane, that'll be loading, and there's good access for that, so. Septic is going to meet local and state standards, we're not converting to a non-residential use, and there are no more than 6 units, so the conversion looks good.
And it's swallowing the intent of, it's an older building. and
Older buildings to be
Other uses.
converted to more residential. Yes.
So that all looks good. Are we satisfied that, well, are there areas of concern to people?
I just wanted to say that normally I like to see all of the parking, you know, have landscaping and screening, but the little parking spaces are all tucked away and they're not large, and so I don't think that there needs to be anything specific. I mean, there's gonna be lawn or, you know, brush growing in around, and so I'm all good with the little
I think the
ones.
place that I would think about it the most would be this, this lower parking space here.
Right?
Just because of Peter's house across the road.
Mhm.
And I think we'll just have to test it some night and see if light travels down there, Peter.
I
So
wonder how many,
it's so
We don't see
elevated
your
that,
lights.
yeah, how many people are gonna park there? I mean, there's really only one unit that's gonna use that.
right, there's really just one unit
Yeah.
that's gonna use that.
Yeah.
So I see the 3 being a little bit more of overflow
Yeah, well, it's
than
nice to have
anything else.
guest
That's
parking.
just kind of that additional space
Yeah.
there.
I think
Yeah.
most of that's behind Behind your building, we don't.
It's
Back
not,
out the window.
I mean, you know, from up here, it is kind of looking down towards
this
yours,
been built?
Peter, but we'll just see. So,
Has that been built yet?
what's that?
Just those 3 parking spaces?
There's kind of a mishmash
they-
of parking right
Yes.
there.
Can they be turned slightly instead of
It
facing the
probably
road?
could be, Rusty, yeah, for sure.
I mean,
Yep.
then you're facing your screening,
Yeah,
so.
there's some trees in here that need to come out
And
and
if
just
I'm
kind of
getting out of
open
the
up
car and
that
walking
space.
back, I don't mind walking nice and straight
Yeah, I
out
know
of
what
my
you're
car.
saying, yeah, sure.
So just turn.
No, that makes good sense though, have them turned a little bit so they don't, so. And it's an easy place to do a screen, there's already kind of a natural buffer there, but that would be the only place that I would be concerned about.
Well, the snow's gonna get pushed right off onto any bushes you put there, so it's kind of like,
Touche, right?
if it, I mean, if it is screened, then it needs to go down and grow high. if
And
that's
there
what
is
you're
some
doing.
good space out further in
Yeah,
front of
yeah,
that.
yeah.
There's kind of a rocky outcropping
Yeah.
there, so,
Yep.
it really has natural screening there
I
currently.
mean, the better thing would be to put a row of trees down in here where they're away from all the ditch, away from the plow,
Right.
and then they would grow up and just, you know, not in a opaque screen way, but even
Sure.
deciduous trees that might do well
And there are a couple nice sugar maples in there now
Mhm.
that, I guess we'll have to look at, but you've never noticed anything there, right?
And that, we don't even notice your trucks going that way, so, I
Right.
mean, that's right across the street, so
Right.
way up there, I'll never notice it.
Okay. Anybody got anything else? Would anybody like to make a motion?
Well, I wanna make sure that the list of things that need to be added on here and, the, you know, narrative stuff, that we're all real clear about that.
Well, I think everything, well, let's review it. Let's get clear on it. We got everything on the checklist, you know?
Yep.
So David's gonna have the checklist to work from, and let's go over anything
And
else.
so Morty's gotta do a written thing about days and
So
hours of
Let's,
operation,
yep,
and he's gotta tell us about the number of employees,
Yep.
both in '89 and at present.
Mhm.
And then we're going to get something from Morty about the, normal business traffic, including truck delivery, and the fact that may need to do emergency deliveries on the
Mhm.
weekends or whatever. So there's that, and then you're gonna add the electric and communication lines onto the plan, you're gonna add the shop lights, and the propane tank is probably gonna go up here, and if not,
I mean, it's something that, once the propane company does it, can we document it afterwards? Is
well, I
that the
wanna
best
know,
way to?
well, it depends on where it is, I mean,
Okay.
to me, it makes a difference, propane tanks are, I mean, I have one that's pretty ugly.
Right. I mean, ideally, I would have them out on this back side.
Right,
The,
but you
the
can't do
challenge
that.
behind that is it's the eve side,
Right,
so.
right, snow shed, no,
we
I
don't-
think that
we
this
don't
is
know
a
how
really
that
good
works.
location, I don't know why
Right.
they wouldn't wanna go there, but, anyway,
So are you suggesting that in some way, let's say they're in a place you don't like when they get placed, are we gonna do anything about that?
well, that's what I kind
We're
of
gonna
wish.
put a screen
we-
around it
we
anyway.
get- we
Do we wanna can we give direction to them as to where to put it?
No, it's about, they have to tell you where they're
Well, I
gonna
know,
put
but
it,
that's
so they
something you
away.
can do and work with the work with the company about where they wanna have it put.
so,
Look
so,
at-
what,
There's a distance that it has to be from the house if it's a certain size.
Right.
And then they're also going to look at their ability to get to it, you know, it has to be within reach of the hose,
Right.
so.
why don't we just say that the planning board encourages the applicant to place it in, what, Vicky?
Okay, so I really like this location because you can't really see it from the road, and for most of the residents here, they're not gonna
Okay,
be, you
so-
know, that's all good. But if this propane company says, oh no, it's gotta be down in this area, this is like, you know, their yard and their, you know, so I would want it to, I mean, maybe they'll say, oh
Yeah,
no, they're right here in
I
this
mean, I
part.
think I can easily steer them away from being down in front
So-
here.
Yeah, they're not gonna want them on a line
Let's-
from there to each place either.
Who knows, I don't
Well, I
know.
don't think so. They're gonna want.
Vicky,
Yeah.
where's the preferred place you would
I
like?
like where Morty has it
Okay, so
here, I like
the
that.
planning board encourages the applicant
Yeah.
to place it in the place where you wanna put it.
I think we can work with that. I mean,
In the
beyond that,
in the northeast
I
corner.
think the only other thing we would look at doing is, again, burying it out back again.
Okay. But in terms
So-
of what we're going over here, we're encouraging you to place it in the northeast corner where you would like to place it.
If you choose to bury it, talk to the neighbors about some digging before you do that.
Will do.
They don't want any more digging.
That might be a good idea.
Yes.
Okay, and let's keep going along.
You just make sure, David, that the record shows that each of these little circles does not mean a conifer tree, and that, the landscape will be worked out to be something that's actually just not a straight line, but, would have some depth to the planting, and, that it's gonna be well maintained in the first 2 years. And our understanding is that it's gonna be a effective screen for the business, and that if some of those trees or plants die, that we're gonna expect that they be replaced and maintained, so that,
Right.
it, screens the business use. And then we are looking also, David, to add to the file, something from the fire department.
Yep.
David's gonna notify our police that we're having more people living here, and then David's gonna put something in about the area for the structures, and the tax card, and tell us how much parking is and circulation space is associated
The
with
extent of the improved areas that are.
With-
I was gonna
Sort of
include
business.
both in front of the shop
Yes.
and
Yes,
basically what I'm gonna do is take the area where the driveway comes out, not include that. So either side of the driveway, I'm gonna just go through with the wheel, measure those, give you a square footage.
right,
And I'll probably take a copy of his plan and just note it on the plan
Yep.
as it goes into the
Yep.
file.
and can you also note that we're gonna have asphalt aprons, but
Sure.
that's the only part of the, parking and circulation that's gonna be paved, and that we expect that mailboxes and Valley News tubes might be added, in a place that's convenient for the post office. And do we wanna have Rusty's idea about angling the parking if possible, at this
That
little
didn't
lower?
seem to be a problem, did it?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
Yeah.
that would be the
That's
intent, would be to have it angled, so
Yeah.
that, in case,
We don't see it.
yeah,
It doesn't matter.
so that's,
That's pretty much, all right, let me just review so that, I wanna get this right. So the permits, we're getting our septic, DOT on the second driveway, fire department approval. David's gonna notify Sean. A tax card for the structures, extent of improved areas documented. You're gonna give us the days of, and hours of operation, number of employees, all that stuff. And that's still, that's a repeat, the stone wall is being added along the boundary line. We're getting the electric line drawn in. Reeves survey established the property line, graphic scale waived.
And I'm
So
just gonna note that the Reeves had given me a copy of the survey, and it's in their file.
Okay.
So that
yep,
good,
is on file here at the town.
good. It's all in the rural zone. You're gonna add power lines to the drawing. You're gonna look for Michael Hensley. A 4x4 maximum unlit sign.
yep,
5 downcast lights, and add, show the business lights as well. Same, you're gonna show the electric path, and that's gonna be the same with the phone and all that other stuff. Buried tank coming out, screen the new tank on the gable end if you can.
well, if it's up there on that end, I don't think it needs additional screening, because it's not really visible, like all these people's
Right,
windows aren't gonna look out on the propane tank.
but is that the place where you'd like it?
I think
Yeah.
up here's perfect, because nobody sees it.
Up on the gable end?
Right,
Yeah, so that's what I'm
yeah,
saying, okay.
yeah.
So, but, yeah, I'm not
So
saying
we don't-
screen it, I'm saying
No,
that,
it
that
is
is,
screened in
that is the
location.
screen,
Yeah,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, screened. tank, okay. Another one of finding Michael Hensley again, and then offset planting. We got all surface water runoff, and there's enough pervious material to handle things, and nothing changing in the dimensions. And again, another thing with the tax cards and David doing the measurements, and a repeat of the DOT septic and fire department. So I think we should be pretty clear between what Vicky went over and what we have here. Okay, so anything else? Can I have a motion? Don't everybody jump up at once.
I guess I'll make a motion to approve the conversion of the single-family house to 4 units and to, I guess, confirm the existence of a non-conforming legal pre-existing use. I mean, and, you know, because some of these site plan changes.
All right,
have
so
to do
let's
with
get
that.
this right. What do we have here? We have a non-conforming lot, we have a,
Non-conforming
Business
use,
use.
not a lot, yeah.
okay,
Commercial use.
you wanna
What do you
say
call it? Commercial use.
a pre-existing
Pre-existing,
non-conforming,
non-conforming,
legal,
Commercial use.
business use.
Yeah, business.
okay, so you got that? So we're approving the conversion,
And some improvements of that pre-existing use.
and,
Because it's using part of the leach field, it's getting a new driveway improved, it's getting more parking lot
okay,
associated
so,
with it.
and
So
we're
it's both
approving
of
this
those.
under the site plan review.
Well, they need to come for site plan for changes
That's
to
what we're,
commercial properties.
that's what we're, I'm
yes.
saying, that's what we're
Yes.
approving it under.
And then that allows me to issue with the permits to
Okay,
go
so
ahead
could
and
you
do all
read
this.
that back so that we?
Oh, you're approving, the conversion of, a single-family house to a 4-unit apartment building, and confirming that there is a pre-existing non-conforming legal business use on the property, and you are approving improvements to that existing business use.
That sound good to
It's
everybody?
shown on this plan.
Yep, as shown on the
It's
plan.
By
shown.
our designer. There's no title on here, usually you reference the plan title.
My 3.5-year-old did it.
You can't blame it on anybody
No, it's
else.
3.5.
All right,
That's the property.
so, do I have a second here? Anybody do a second? Here's a second. All those in favor? All those opposed? There you go.
Thank you, board.
And thank you.
I'm just so impressed with your minds that you can take all this stuff.
You are the only one who's impressed with our minds. That's really nice to hear, because there are a lot of other people are not impressed.
Well, you're welcome.
But thank you.
It is a difficult thing that you guys do.
It is.
Interpreting all of
It
this.
is. And thank you for your
It's
patience.
appreciated.
Yeah, you've been very patient.
Very patient
Most of
and
you guys
cooperative,
lawyers, or-
appreciate it.
Now, none of us are we?
What?
Okay.
Are any of you lawyers? I mean, it sounds like.
I went to law school for a half hour. Literally.
They kicked it out.
No, I ran out.
Technical terms.
Literally.
Confusing as hell.
Yeah.
They really are.
John is,
Good job.
All right,
Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
and it's only nine.
If I just go out and take those pictures. No.
Well, and actually, we need to
And I
talk
will
about
make my quick
the,
edits
Yes,
and.
the RFP.
Oh my God, you would not be.
Okay, sounds good.
I can be there if you want, if you want me.
Whatever works best.
No, we're not even close. First
Try
of
to get
all,
away, yes, we are.
we gotta do the minutes.
I just thought you were gonna- And the other thing.
Unless you wanna talk about the RFP.
Yeah, minutes first, and then RFP.
Way down where you're gonna put the conveyor, do you need a light?
So, oh, here, David, let me make sure.
Just let me make sure I have.
And any questions?
I mean,
uh,
again, 6 o'clock in the morning during the winter, they're filling up the truck.
no, before the RFP, we're gonna do.
Yeah, not very often we ever do that, so.
4 o'clock.
Take us a minute.
No, that's a good point, right.
Where's he going?
He's not
Restroom
allowed.
break,
Huh?
restroom break.
Oh, restroom break. I thought we weren't allowed to take our restroom breaks. I thought that was,
moving it along.
Yeah.
Yeah, that creates an urgency to get done.
Good
It
done.
does.
All right.
Hey, I found his doppelganger recently.
Who?
Mine?
Yes.
Where?
What?
On YouTube.
Yeah.
What's the person's name?
Well, it's not his name, he's a drummer in a band.
Oh, really?
What band?
That's me.
It's a German Oompa band.
Herr Fürstenberg,
Yeah.
wie geht's?
Yeah.
Spielen Sie?
I see, wow, maybe 5.
It's an Oompa band that's doing a cover of Highway to Health by AC/DC. And he
He's
looks
from,
like the drummer.
Hanover.
Oh, I think I
just got the,
may have seen that.
Google
Was that?
info on my,
Yeah.
it's identical to my property. She
Yeah,
she
gotta
has
wait for
one,
Russ.
page 33.
Okay.
That looks like you.
Okay.
She got a lot more.
Let's see. So we get up and dance?
There's one right here.
What's that?
Your wife's home yet?
She is, yes.
Oh,
That is
really?
his doppelganger.
So you're on vacation?
That's me, obviously.
These guys are great.
It's,
For the clarinet.
I said this looks like Eric.
Great.
We'll just wait, it gets better.
Here comes the horn.
When was this current?
Well,
How years ago?
it's AC/DC, so it came out in the 80s, the original, but their cover is.
All right, kids, party's over.
Somebody once observed that the fact that there's a highway to hell and a stairway to heaven indicates the expected relative traffic.
They probably sold the most albums of any band.
Really?
Really?
AC/DC.
Really?
I've heard the name, that's all I know.
And you should look up Steven the Seagull's version of Thunderstruck.
I think they hold that distinction.
I had no idea. All right, we got minutes.
Bing Crosby held those. I think Bing Crosby was
Um,
actually.
Anybody have any comments about the minutes?
I thought they were great.
Yes, the one I sent out said, at the very end, the new business, Vicky was unhappy with Article 8.2.1, and I should have said 8.1.2.
Okay.
John caught that and recently, and it's been changed.
Okay.
Um,
That's that.
Anything else? All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended by David and John.
I'll second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, so that passes. So, I just got the updated version really late, and I was trying to synthesize what the comments I was seeing from the board, and particularly Vicky's, which I thought were very good. So I do have a synthesis, and I even tried to incorporate a little bit of what came in so late here. So I'd be happy to pass this around for people to look at.
Maybe we just make copies.
Yeah, that'd be the best thing.
Has anybody been able?
And you're on the committee, so we can ask you questions.
Well, regrettably, I was not there last
Oh,
night.
you weren't there?
No,
Oh.
somebody asked me out to dinner, and frankly, it was a better
No,
option.
no, I totally understand.
Have any,
But we can still ask you questions.
have any planning board members been through the latest draft and been able to see if our comments have been incorporated?
I think that
I think
some of them have.
Somewhere, yeah, yeah.
I got to read it for about 5 minutes, and that's about
Yeah,
it. So
and, I mean, I got it really late, so
Everybody got it really
that's a
late.
problem.
I read it.
Um,
I had some questions.
There were, I thought there were some good things in it.
I think it's improved,
It's improved, and,
definitely improved.
anyway, we'll go over it when you get the stuff.
So you have, this, what's coming is a draft that you have edited?
I tried to put in, I spent.
But it's from you, it's not from?
No, it's not from them.
Okay.
It's got a lot of what Vicky said and some of what you said, actually.
I was really glad that my favorite question about the appropriateness of the tax base is still there. I wanna know what that means, and what are we comparing that to anyways?
All right, well, let's
So,
go.
I mean, I just don't understand the question.
I think that.
Like, what are we gonna do?
Let's just
blow
work,
our-
let's work our way through it
Okay,
using both of these things, the thing you're gonna get and the latest proposal. We can go through them
okay.
section by section.
Yeah.
In the
Does
meantime,
the Friday deadline still holds
which Friday deadline?
to get it done without?
I don't know.
We need to turn, we agreed to turn around
We'll
comments.
turn it around
so
as
we-
quickly as possible. That, what we agreed to do is do it as quickly as possible.
Yep.
And given that we just finished a 2-hour meeting, 2 hours and over 2-hour meeting, I would say this constitutes a good faith effort.
Well, and then we went on Monday, or whenever that meeting was,
Monday
and,
night.
We're working overtime tonight and we'll try to do this as fast as possible. I mean, one of my big questions is,
what's the rush?
what is the rush? I mean, and this is a question I can ask you, is what if this was, what if even the visioning was done in the fall, early fall? What is the problem? I mean, why, I mean, I'm willing to work this hard for a good reason, but I wanna know what the good reason is, because I don't see any material difference in doing the visioning in, even, in July and doing it in September.
Well, it almost seems like the process begins with the first step, which is to come up with a proposal
Right,
to request.
right.
And then everything else flows from what answer we get. So it
Right.
seems like we can't begin to even think about anything beyond
There was
that
a
first
drop,
step.
yeah, so it had to be done by August 15th, and it's like most families aren't around during the summer, so I don't see how
Yeah, I was
that's
gonna say, it's hard,
gonna be inclusive.
it's hard to do it in the summer, I think.
I think one of the things that will happen is whomever we choose as a consultant is gonna say,
Exactly.
you know, let's not try to do it over the summer because there won't be good representation. I mean, lots of people will be here, but lots of people won't. And so, I mean,
So,
that may be the advice that comes out.
so that speaks to, this issue of, racing to get this out. Um,
Well, I think we do need to get it out.
I think we should get it out as quickly as possible, but
I think we're really talking about two separate issues here. One is the speed of turning around the RFP, and the other are deadlines that are in the
Right.
RFP.
right,
And those are different things.
okay. So what are your thoughts on each of those things?
Friday versus Monday for getting the RFP out, I think is irrelevant.
Right?
Like tomorrow versus over the weekend and Monday.
Yeah, I mean, I
One of those
I
days
think
is
I
irrelevant.
mean, we might have to have, I don't know how anybody else feels, but we might have to have.
have a second, special
a
meeting.
Special meeting. I mean, just to get it done.
To get it done.
Just to finish it up.
Okay, we'll see if we need that when we figure out how happy we are with it.
Okay, well, let's go through
But
it.
they-
Because I think realistically, we're not gonna be able to finish
I don't
tonight,
think, I don't think
obviously,
so.
unless we wanna be here until midnight.
I don't think so, but let's get started.
Yeah.
So why don't you read both introduction and background, and then we'll take it from there.
Does anyone need a copy of the other one?
I got the latest one.
The original,
Yeah, the one that I sent out.
yeah, actually, if I could get a copy of it.
I'd be interested to see what thoughts John had, if he had a spare.
Sure, that's the original, or the one that's sent out by Sue. There's the one from John.
Oh, these are different, yes.
Still at it.
Sleeping.
I'm trying to compare, like, I don't know, I'm a little concerned about the complete rewrite, but only from the standpoint of logistics.
Did you have a meeting last night?
No, I did not.
Oh, you did not?
I'm not.
Okay.
You know.
I'm all meetinged out, let me tell you.
I'm sure you were.
So,
Do we
we got
know
the
how
report today at the select board meeting, which we met for 4 hours this morning.
All right, let's stay on focus here. So, comments, thoughts?
I sort of agree with the rest of you that I think a total rewrite isn't
Okay,
isn't necessary. That said, I think we can incorporate.
Yeah, I mean, that was the
all
thought.
your concerns can be incorporated in here. I hope, I haven't digested everything.
Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
thought of as a total rewrite, it was thought of as an alternative that could be combined.
You left some things in that were the same. I mean,
Yeah, some of the things were the same.
What I really thought was we could use our consultant much more by them developing some scenarios and parameters for measuring, and those could be none of the things that we ultimately choose to do, but then we've got a process for evaluating like different futures for ourselves and the measures for them, not that, oh, I think it stinks, but to be able to run, comparable analysis. And so I thought that is using expertise much more. I mean, we can get a college student to look at demographics and describe our tax base and, the history of the tax base. I mean, that's a statistical descriptive narrative. That's not using that person's skills. And that's why I wanted to, if we're gonna really choose somebody, let's get somebody to, use their experience and, give us some good stuff.
I think that came out of the meeting was when Stuart Annette was there, and he talked about the first
That's
part,
right.
the first phase being collecting the data. getting
That
things
needs to be
down.
done, but,
Right.
and he, I'm sure has a format and can do that really well, but that's not using what his experience is, and, it's, that's a descriptive
You were
thing.
talking about three different scenarios, right?
Just because, we can all like go, oh yeah, I kinda want this and I kinda want that, but nobody responds to anything unless they've got something really to look at and go, ooh, that,
Well,
or that looks really good, or I like this part of that one and that part of
Exactly.
that one, and we can, I can move ahead with that, those are good ideas.
I thought that your
So-
idea was great, because what I experienced at the last visioning thing was exactly what you're talking about. You have, not countless people, but you got a lot of people, and at one point, we were sitting at tables and drawing pictures and everything, and it sort of just gets like, there's no focus. So if you have three scenarios, or whatever, I mean, you chose three,
Right.
but if you have actual scenarios with actual consequences, I think it's great, because another thing that what I found the last time, which was a real flaw, and is, to be fair, is a flaw in every town when this happens, is there's no real discussion of trade-offs. There's no real in-depth going into, okay, if you want this, here are the consequences of this. If you don't want this, here are the consequences of this. So like, in the idea of taxes, broader tax, for people who don't wanna do anything, it can be pointed out, well, here's what's gonna happen to your taxes.
I think that was discussed, actually, I heard that was discussed as a goal of this as well, so,
Is-
one of the scenarios is,
But
what
if
if we
you
do
have three
nothing, what's
scenarios,
gonna happen?
one is
But you
always
need
do
three.
nothing,
Or
that's
at least.
always to do nothing, and then you have two others.
And then
One is
you
gonna
have
do
one where
way,
you,
one
where you
way.
do just a ton of stuff,
Right.
and then what are
Something
the,
broader.
what comes out of that,
Right.
all these potentially somewhat predictable consequences, and then, something, a variety of scenarios where people are not just left wandering off in the desert.
Yeah, you
I
have to
think
give
it's-
people choices.
I think it's a,
Okay, yeah.
It's not just choices, but
It's
also.
not just choices.
Knowing the consequences. There was,
Well-
the last survey, there was a lot of questions, do you think such and such is a good idea, The conservation of land, is that a good idea?
Of course.
And people are going to answer
Yes.
yes, because it is.
right.
Right.
But it doesn't tell them, oh, if you conserve land, then you're not going to be adding any houses to the tax base.
So
You know,
those are the things.
You need to understand the
Right.
flip side of what.
Those are the things I'd like to see the consultant really get across to people. Everybody has their biases on different biases on this board, on the committee, but for the broader public, it's really important that they get a chance to have the scenarios laid out with the consequences and the trade-offs.
Well, I mean, now we're really talking about changing the scope of the project.
Well, that, it's interesting, wasn't there last night, but I've been thinking about this all along, and I had always envisioned that it would be incumbent on the consultant to help us. I hadn't envisioned 3 different scenarios, but suppose, what would the impact of a strip mall be? We would all hate it, it would be a bad idea, I think. I don't usually come up with normative statements, but this would be a bad idea. But what would it do to the tax base? And I don't have a good instinct whether it would actually make a difference, or, well, it wouldn't actually make any difference. But to have somebody say, a strip mall would do this, you'd have this much new tax base, you'd have this much revenue, you'd have these services, da-da-da-da, that's a choice. Emerson Gardens, let's take Emerson Gardens, you know, the big apartments in downtown Lebanon. What would that do? You know, how many kids live there, how many big people, adults I guess they're called, live there?
Sometimes.
What would that do? You know, I wouldn't mind a co-housing illustration, you know my bias there. What would a flower shop and a barber shop and a funeral home
Exactly.
and another house of worship and all that do to the tax base? And do we think we would want any of that? And I think to say these illustrations, these kinds of businesses, these kinds of housing developments, these kinds of whatever would, it's pretty easy to see what the tax base would be, is you know how much they cost, you know how much to build, you know what the property value is, so you can come up with the effect on the tax revenue. And then what would that actually do for the town? And I think that employs the expertise of the consultant.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
think
That-
I
we're
think
all
that's
on
what we
the
need.
So
same page, I guess.
I think we'd envisioned that, we didn't call it out specifically, but I think that's part and parcel of the consultant educating the folks in those meetings to say, this is what the effect would be.
Yeah, so I'd like, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, so in the project description, I mean, the way it's written, I could see that sort of thing wouldn't get done. It just, basically, you discuss these factors. I'd like
Which
it.
are boring, as a matter of fact, unless you put them into action, so that they can describe an economic future.
Right,
That's the thing, is that like the rifling of the numbers, the graphs and all that,
that's
it's
just
gonna turn
collecting.
people, they'll just glaze over. I mean, you know, everybody's happy to learn about that stuff for, you know, the narrative,
Well, you know, like
demographic and
it's
tax-based,
in the
but-
master plan,
Right.
and how many people read that?
Right,
You know,
right,
that
but
section.
it's like that, those considerations come alive when you're comparing
Exactly.
different economic futures, and that's what I wanted to do,
Mhm.
was to make it.
I thought it was a great
you know,
idea.
that way, and, you know, it may be that the consultant that we choose has actually worked in a town, and he can use that town as, you know, real life town that, you know, and their experience, and then, okay, then put that in Lyme, and, you know, this was the strip mall, you know, they had office, restaurant, you know, just take that strip mall and put it there, because that's a real live, viable economic thing, and then what would that do, how would that change our tax base, what would it do for traffic, blah, blah, in Lyme.
You would also have to also consider where.
Well,
because it-
exactly.
That's,
Right.
good, you know,
Right,
you put a development, you know, Route 10 North versus Route 10 South,
yes.
the impacts
Very
could
different.
very be
Very,
different.
yes.
Or, you know, if you're putting
Well, there
housing developments, you know, the further out you go, the greater.
And I think another interesting scenario would be if, well, I guess I mentioned it before, there are gonna be people who don't want anything done.
Right, and they need to understand.
That scenario should be
Has to be-
presented.
That's always the first
And then,
scenario.
you know, different, I think there are like two intersecting things here. One are, So different scales of, say, we're talking about 0 to 5, 5 being the highest intensity of development, you know, so let's go up the scale. And then on the horizontal arc, let's go over the different types of development as you go up the intensity level and the locations. I mean, there are like three intersecting things: location, intensity, and types of use. And I think we need a really skilled consultant to choose the right combination of things to get that across.
Yeah, we may need more than 3 scenarios.
We may need more than three.
Well, I don't think for 15,000 we get it,
Right.
you know, so
Right.
we gotta keep it manageable, we don't wanna have to pay more. We don't wanna expand the scope so that we don't get
Right.
something important to talk about at the visioning and, you know, that, so.
I think 3 is a good,
Well, it's too many for any of us to think about, but
Right.
if we got a way of evaluating, then we can put together our own scenario and go, well, maybe this is really what we want, and then from that would flow zoning things, or, you know, how to recruit businesses or whatever. So that, because we have a framework, everyone's worked with it with a consultant, we know what we're talking about when we say this kind of impact, and, you know, it's developing a vocabulary together. I mean, a lot of this is the town working together to get an economic future that we're comfortable with. And
So-
it has to be consensus building and in that process.
Kind of appreciate this idea of 3, but I do think it gets cumbersome under this budgetary scenario. And I'm wondering if we don't rely on the expertise of whoever this is to go up that whole chart and just kind of let them pick one of them and say, that's what development is. Because what I'm reading from here is they're not doing the no change scenario. They're doing a change scenario. They're asking for a
Right,
change
right.
scenario. And I agree, I think there should be a no change scenario to compare that to. So I think just those 2 give us a great basis to get started. And then I'm afraid that 3 and then 4 and 5
Well, I
requires a
think 3
significant amount of additional
Yeah,
investment.
but then
I
if you
think
have
3
one
is a
other
good
though,
number, yeah.
how far do you go, you know, one other which is development, what would it be? I mean, it could be all, you know, it could be a little development, it could be a lot of development, it could be.
Well, I think we can read
you know.
into, if, I would assume they're not gonna, whoever this is not gonna pick the far out scenario as the comparison.
Right.
They're gonna pick something in the middle for which we're gonna have to decide, well, a little bit less than that, or maybe a little bit more than that, whatever. But
If we could do
Yeah, I
that.
mean, this is something to negotiate as well, and you
Right,
get, you get
the other
input on
thing
what
is
this
that
goes
I
on.
heard Nils say that they weren't gonna use the Lyme Foundation money because the Lyme Foundation money it was described to the Lyme Foundation, they were gonna contract with UNH. So, okay, so Lyme Foundation said, yeah, we'll give you the money whenever you contract with UNH. Well, I don't think it's consultant specific, it's just that that's what was presented. So I think you go back to the grants committee, the Lyme Foundation, and say, we don't wanna contract with UNH, can we contract with somebody else and still get the money? Then that money is in play then. I mean, that's crazy not to access it for that reason. I mean, it just that was the consultant.
So, I'm not real, so I'm on the periphery a little bit, and I keep hearing different bits and pieces of this, but one of them was that they had already made some application. I don't know that that's true, because I don't know, do you know?
I
that
do
they-
know it's
Well,
true
he said-
because
he said.
I.
So did they get awarded money?
They got
Yeah,
awarded,
they-
they got award, but
they
they
turned
didn't
it
get them,
down.
but they haven't asked for the money because the award said, you know, when you contract with UNH, because that was
I
the
see.
initial proposal.
That was the initial
You can get the
Okay.
money, it's just the Lyme Foundation
They-
isn't,
and-
you
and
know, if you
then,
don't.
so then all these gyrations started and they never followed through on
No,
it.
Never
no,
followed
no, the
through.
committee, and you can, what Neil said was the committee didn't wanna work with UNH.
Right,
Right?
I think that
yeah, he did.
I actually was not formally part of the committee in those
At that
early
time.
days, and my sense was that the UNH deadlines were such that nothing would happen in what was seen as a timely way.
I'm
So,
pretty sure Lyme Foundation doesn't care who's the consultant, it just,
Yes,
the
but in
point
any
is that
case-
you need to have a
Okay.
contract. and
Yeah.
they will
So
give
let
you
me
the
just,
money.
go, so what in none of this, I guess I can say, I don't have any documentation of this whatsoever, it's all been verbal,
Mhm.
back and forth, and different people saying different things. But I do understand that they want to use the foundation as a conduit, so to speak, for their charitable donations to fund a benefit and a grant to pay for this. So the contributions will be made to the foundation, and the foundation will,
Nobody has
Hold on.
brought that to the
So
foundation,
that's-
so they've done
well-
it.
Let's go over the, I'm not following. So you mean that the $15,000
yes.
is going where?
So I'm understanding that they wanna use the foundation as the conduit for
So it was
the
the foundation, the
donation.
LCDC.
And then, and I've even said this,
No,
this
the
then.
Oh, the Lyme Foundation.
The Lyme Foundation, and then this adds a confusion because
Yeah, that's.
any grant, as we pointed out before, the committee doesn't apply for the grant, the town has to apply for that
Right.
grant, it's a
Right.
town committee.
Right.
So we made it clear that this grant, if that's the way they're gonna go, has to be applied for by, whereas the other
It has to be
idea.
applied for by
By
what?
the select board.
By the
And-
select board.
Right.
Would
and
be
then-
applying to the Lyme Foundation to accept the money
No, the Lyme Foundation has to accept the money on its own.
on its
But
own.
once it gets the money, we're saying a grant would come from the select board to get the money to pay for this consultant.
So people would donate money to the Lyme Foundation specifically
For
for
this
this
purpose.
project.
That's kind of what I.
It can't work
Right.
that way, guys.
Yeah, I don't think
If it's
that-
a charitable
that-
contribution, no. But the Lyme Foundation has a pot of money that they give away every year. There's a grant round that ends on
So
Saturday.
these are the,
So-
these are the things that they're
Yeah.
working through, and I'm not really
Yeah.
sure
So-
what the conclusion is, and if they see a hurdle that they can't get over going that way,
Mhm,
there's
Why-
always available for them. Originally,
mhm.
we had told them, if you just apply, you go and raise the money and you do this. But then it came back that, no, wait a minute, this is a, you know,
That's more-
it's
more
a
transparent.
town, well, it's a town, so therefore the money, and the fact that they want a charitable deduction for this
The Lyme
contribution.
Foundation has money that they
I
want to
get-
give away, so you don't even need to work the
Yeah, but they're
charitable
not gonna
foundation.
give 15.
You mean
I don't know,
that?
ask them.
No, but I'm just saying that-
So I just wanna understand the thing with the money. So there are people who wanna donate this money for the purpose of what?
Funding this project.
Hiring
The
the
project
Study- doing a
of,
study.
okay. And why isn't that money being donated to the town directly?
Well, so I think, I'm not really sure, but I think the complication was that even if the money is donated to the town, it then has to be a public hearing for us to appropriate the money.
So,
So as we talked about today, I think that hurdle, which maybe they were trying to avoid, is the same hurdle whether we apply for a grant to get the money as a grant. Even if we got a grant from the Lyme Foundation, it comes to the town,
you're
we
still gonna
still have to have a public.
It's gotta be
Yeah.
public,
Well,
because,
no,
because
that's right.
But Rusty, the other night, Chris Ramsden was indicating that if we didn't use the money pretty soon, it was gonna go away.
I think that's a little bit of an overstatement. He
'Cause
was
that's what he
saying,
was implying.
he was saying, if we don't have a plan in place, we don't have a plan
Yeah.
that will occur in a reasonable period of time, the money might not be available.
Might not
Right.
come.
I mean,
Well, that's what
were
that's
were
what
we
I
to
meant.
say, nah, we're not gonna think about this till next February,
yeah, well, that's not gonna.
but that's not gonna happen.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's what I meant, he was
So the
implying that if we
logistics of the
didn't- yeah.
donations
So-
has just been, bounced around.
So-
You can't like wash money like
Yeah,
that for
yeah.
away.
Well, so one of the things that Ken, and this is where it was originally understood, is that this committee would just go out and hire someone to help them do their job,
Mhm.
and someone donated, they paid for the services of a consultant, and then this work was given to the town.
Well,
That's-
it's different if, like, back in 1998, I think Lava, which was not a town.
No, it was a separate
It was a
501c3.
Yeah, so 501c3, they went out and they did research and presented it to the town. But this is a select board sanctioned town committee, and it's gotta be transparent, and the money has to be given to the town to serve a purpose. It can't be like,
I don't know the ins and outs. Dina is really the person to talk to, because she knows the ins and outs of what the
Of how that
DRA
works.
requires. And there may be something that says, well, if you donate money to the town, it can't be or how it is spent,
It can't be appropriated without a public forum.
and it might be that it only can be
A hearing, I'm
appropriated
sorry, hearing.
at town meetings.
No,
And if
well,
that's-
no, that, in this case, it wouldn't.
Okay,
require
there's
that.
So
something
what's the problem with a public hearing?
No, I don't, not that, but we did have a situation where someone paid for the radio tower improvements that were made for the fire department. And that gift, the cash did not come into the town, they simply gave the actual product.
Yeah, I think that's different.
And
where
that is different.
But
It's
you're saying
different
that-
when you're talking about something that's influencing town policy and when you're buying a radio, you know, these are different things.
But you're also saying that the donors want to be able to write it off.
Well, they can
as
do
well.
that, can't they, if there's a donation to the town?
They can do it both ways.
Yeah.
They can do both ways.
So if the problem was that they didn't wanna have to have a public hearing, which I don't think is a problem, but.
You guys meet all the time, you
Yeah,
can have a
well,
public hearing
I
anytime.
mean, the public hearings, if you had that no one showed up.
I know, so that's why this is a bit of
that's
a,
absurd.
it's a bouncing ball, that's
Yeah.
like, what?
You can ask, I mean, the application has already been written, if you took the old application that the CDC wrote and gave to the Lyme Foundation and replaced it with hiring a consultant, using a competitive bidding process, and we want $15,000, you know, the grant, they're waiting for grants to come in this weekend, or grant applications, and they would make the decision, in May.
Right.
So it's not that long, and then there's all the money right there, and nobody has to pony up at all. I mean, everybody's already donated to Lyme Foundation, and that's what they're there for, is supporting public projects that, you know, are good for the whole town, and this
Right.
is
So, you
totally a
know-
good thing for the whole town.
Yeah.
I don't want to
But it-
complicate the whole issue.
I
in that.
understand, but you have the ability to do a really quick, just change the consultant by competitive, or, you know, this RFP proposal and put in a new number and submit, and then we don't want the other one that was already granted, just replace it.
And that could
Yeah.
simplify the process.
And unfortunately, you have to do it tomorrow, probably.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in on Saturday, Abby Murphy's.
I was told that they'll hold emergency meetings if they want to.
Oh,
If there's
really?
But
some-
I mean,
But
you're
maybe it
saying
could be
it's,
done.
it's,
It's
it's
easy.
If there's some date,
a 5-minute edit. is what
and
you're
they,
saying.
and they do it quarterly, so.
Sounds like, no, but anyway, you know, I'm just saying, if, I don't wanna hold this process up. So, like, Saturday is a grant deadline, which they might allow to extend to the next week. If you guys need a little more time, just call Abby's the grants committee chairperson.
Right.
Just say, look, we're really working on this, sorry, we got held up, select board need to meet and say we gotta submit the thing for 15,000 to Lyme Foundation. And that solves the Chris Ramsden problem, and the town legitimately gets money, you can have a hearing if you get the award, and it's so easy.
Right.
That's what they're there for.
Well, yeah, they have to approve it, so there is
Yeah.
always that they
Yes.
don't, so.
What about money that's coming not from the Lyme Foundation?
I was hoping to solve that problem, because they're sounding, unless you guys will accept a gift. I mean, say the Lyme Foundation only gives you half the amount, and there would still be, then you'd have to still have a public hearing to receive stuff from the Lyme Foundation and private donations for this project, so that's
And
easy.
that would work, yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah.
That- We went over that today, that, you know,
Oh my
we
God.
don't, we don't have, we're not the donors, so if the
Yes.
donors have all these,
Yes,
believe me,
yes.
donors have interesting things they like to jump through, and
Well,
So-
that may be why it has to happen soon. Maybe there's a tax year end for somebody that
no,
needs to.
I don't know that that's really what the issue, I think,
Okay.
I think what, and I think you would basically stated, what Chris was trying to say was, people are not sitting out there waiting for this to be a 3-year process, and they
Mhm.
want it.
Well, it's not gonna be,
Right.
that's not gonna be an issue.
I was gonna, come back to, we're trying to think of, is there a way to respond to this, to the, RFP that the, LCDC put out, and I think the question I would put to you is, are there questions that you would wanna be sure are covered? We talked about some of them. Various scenarios, are there specific scenarios that wouldn't have to be in the RFP, but when we chat
Well,
up
I
a
mean,
consultant?
I think that we can address later. I think
Right.
we need to
Okay.
be more specific about what we're what would be our questions, as you're putting it, about the document.
Okay.
And the general one, I guess in terms of what Vicky presented, which I thought was terrific, in the way she phrased it too. You know, is that acceptable and possible to the committee?
I think what Rich is asking here is if, because this is what their committee met, their committee approved, the select board met, the select board approved, it's in your hands to
Well,
make
here's the
suggestions, and it
problem.
can go back, so
Yeah,
let
I
me
know.
finish, it can go back.
If
Do we
we-
really want it to go back? And so
No,
what
I
I'm
don't want it to
asking
go
you
back.
here is, if I read this, and I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate it, but I do think that this is a request for proposals, and then there will be interviews with whoever responds.
Mhm.
And at that time, can we not interject what we mean by G and H on the project description
Mhm.
as being these scenarios?
You could, but I will say, I thought it was very disingenuous for Nils not to have forwarded the RFP to us, when we could have had a very productive working
Right.
session together on Monday. It just like, that drives
Yeah,
me crazy.
right.
And so now the pressure is on us, because it's already been approved by the select board, to like say, oh yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I mean,
And so
I think we have to do our due
really
diligence.
feel like that is like not coming to the table to work together. So I was offended by that. But anyway, I think that the proposal that came to us this afternoon is a lot better
I
than
agree.
what we saw earlier in the week on Monday night. So I think that there's a great deal of improvement, so I appreciate that.
So I have a question, and maybe this is just me, but, you know, the way it's written, and if this is okay with everybody on the board, so be it, but, I thought that we were coming together, you know, to work together.
I do too.
And the way this reads is, it's basically the LCDC is doing everything, but, you know, the planning board can go along for the ride. And if we're gonna be genuine partners, I want that to be in the request for proposal.
Yeah, the consultant should not be managing any difference. I mean, we gotta be all on the same team,
Right.
LCDC and the planning board, and getting into this, so we're not wasting consultant time. I mean, and I really do believe we do have common purpose and goal
I
for
think,
this, so,
I
but
think-
The other
agree.
thing is that if we're gonna work together, then obviously the planning board and the LCDC has to pick the consultant together. I mean,
Right.
goes without saying, right?
I mean, the way it's written here, the contract for professional services will be with the LCDC.
Right.
There's a comma and a but, you know, legal document, that's sort of like, that's the prevailing language. But will be negotiated by LCD, well, that really doesn't hold much substance.
Right.
So, my feeling is, if we're gonna be working jointly and in good faith, it's gotta be reflected in the request for proposal.
Just so I'm with you, what were you
Oh,
referring to?
in the introduction and background,
Yeah,
right there, the LCD wishes, it says accordingly the LCDC wishes to engage a consultant. Well, first of all, I think it's the LCDC and the planning board. And then it says the contract for professional services will be with the LCDC. And it will be, I would say it will be with the LCDC and the planning board. The way I would phrase it is the professional services will be, well, the contract and will be with LCDC and the planning board, and and negotiated by the LCDC and the planning board. You know, essentially, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna be equals.
Right.
so I,
Yeah, because under project description, it does say LCDC and the planning board.
and they did it in the second sentence
Right,
here,
but
but they
the-
failed in the first sentence.
Right, so
Yeah,
they're-
maybe
that-
they
that-
just
And I really
forgot.
actually
they
think,
may have just forgotten to do that.
I think the contract will be with the select board. I think it's with the select board.
I don't think you can contract with any of us.
Right.
You know, it's with the
So then
town
let's
select
state
board.
that, but
Yeah.
will be negotiated by the And it says somewhere else,
I think the planning board can contract with it, 'cause you
We
can
don't
hire-
sign contracts, the planning board chairman doesn't sign contracts, the select board signs our contracts. I mean,
Right.
it can kind of work for us, but.
and in the evaluation factors, it says the LCDC will rate proposals based on, again, I would say the LCDC and that's number 6,
Right.
and the planning board.
Yeah. Yeah, they probably just forgot.
They probably just forgot.
So,
And typically,
can we say the town, rather than trying to say LCDC and the planning board, just say, back under introduction, accordingly, the town wishes to engage the consultant.
Yeah. And then the contract for professional
I mean,
services.
they're both part of the town, so that's why.
Typically, you would say something at the beginning, saying the LCDC and the planning board as,
Yeah.
give them a name, and then you would just refer to that same name
You
throughout the
can
contract.
just refer to us as a joint,
Or how about just calling us the town?
yeah, you can refer to us and the LCDC jointly as the town.
Right, right.
You can define that in the introduction, and then you don't have to keep repeating this over and over.
And issued by Lyme, the way you changed it,
Yeah, right, and again, at the top,
right at the top.
where it says issued by, it would be LCDC, or, however you wanna put it, LCDC and the Lyme Planning Board. I really liked what they did, how they changed the introduction language.
Right.
I thought that was great.
I think there's a typo maybe in that sentence where, that paragraph we're just talking about, where it goes through economic trend, let's see, the consultant will evaluate the current tax-based demographics, economic trends, geography constraints, housing infrastructure, and impact should it be the changes will have on existing services instead of?
Oh, well, I
Just take
think,
off-
I think,
just
that- I
take
think
off
if you
that.
took out will have, you could, and impact of changes on existing services, you could take out will have. Although, but then if that's referring to the others, no, you're right,
Take out the of.
yeah, you're
Yeah,
right,
and put
yeah.
the, or
No, just take it out.
Just take it out completely.
And impact
Impact changes
changes
will
will have on, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, right, you get it, all right, you don't
Right.
need the, you could have the, but you don't need.
The impact of
Okay.
changes.
Yeah, so that should be taken.
Do we have a sense of how many consultants there are out there
Yeah, Vicky,
that
I
would
was gonna ask.
take this on?
Well, Vicky's
how
the
many-
most experienced person.
Is it
Yeah.
20, is it 10, is it 5?
There's a ton of people who wanna work, I mean, can they respond within 2 weeks, assuming that these even get posted in places that they're going to look?
Well, that's another,
That's-
I mean,
that's
that's
a whole
another
other
issue.
issue.
I think,
If it gets posted and nobody responds, then it's gonna have to get posted again.
So,
I mean, that's,
but-
so are you gonna put it
Do we
on
want
plan
minimum-
link?
minimum
it's
number
gonna
of
be up to Dina,
responses?
she's the one that
Well,
does.
you can recommend to her that it should go on plan link, right? Cause she may
but
not
hold
know
on,
about
can
it.
we just
Yeah.
back up a minute?
Yes,
Because that's another question I have, and this is related to what
Mhm.
we were talking about before. We're not talking about 6 months or a year. We're talking about a pretty limited amount of time. We wanna get responses, and and one thing Mike Smith's, who's probably the best person to pay attention to in this whole thing, said, is you don't want somebody who's gonna respond in 2 weeks. Because you're gonna get somebody who doesn't have a lot of business, and is probably not very good. I think if we can reasonably provide a little bit more time for people to respond, we'll get a better outcome. So I totally understand the urgency, but I think at a certain point, the urgency becomes counterproductive. And what Mike was saying, I thought was really good stuff. We're not gonna, somebody might be great might not be able to help us for a year, and so they're just out of the picture. But we might get people who are, you know, it's gonna take them 3 weeks to respond, and we might get better people, I think we'd be likely to get better people. So, you know, I'm not saying let's wait 6 months, but I'd say like, just slow down a little so that we're striking the balance between rushing it and, getting good people.
I agree, I mean, the urgency makes me nervous as well.
Yeah, I mean, that
And
degree of
especially
urgency, not some urgency, but that degree.
And the idea that there's strings attached to private donations makes me,
Yeah, I'm a little
little squeamish
uncomfortable
as
with
well.
that as well. I mean, if people are gonna contribute to this, they should contribute. And there shouldn't be strings attached, and it should be public, because it's public policy. But, you know,
So, and I'm not saying I don't agree and don't understand what you're saying here, but I have to balance that with the fact that whatever we get here as a product, if it's funded by whomever funds it in the town, and the taxpayers don't have to come up with this money, you can shoot all the holes in
I
the
think
world,
that's-
and we can go get another one
That's
that'll be
great.
better, but this is a start.
but there are legal issues. There are legal issues about it, and there are also, you know, I mean,
Wait, wait, wait. I'm saying, when we get, what do you mean legal issues there? We're gonna get a proposal, and it could be something we just, in the trash.
Hopefully we get 3 proposals.
Well, I don't mean that.
No, no,
I
I'm
mean,
not talking about
in
the
the end, when we
proposals.
pick somebody and we do, and the end product could be, I hear what you're saying about waiting and getting the best person for it and
oh, wait a
everything
minute, I
else
thought
that-
you were talking about the money.
Well,
I didn't know what you were talking about.
they're related.
That's exactly what I'm saying. I mean, I'm kinda saying, let's not look a gift horse in the mouth here. Let's get something from the people who are willing to give us the money to do
I'm
this.
delighted to get the money. It should also be contributed to the town.
And I'm not saying it isn't. It is contributed to the town. It will be. What we're saying is this delay to get the right person. I'm just trying to,
Oh, okay, so
Comment on your-
let me ask you, do you think that a difference of 3 weeks is gonna matter?
it's not my call.
No, but I'm asking you.
I understand, but I'm telling you that it's not my call.
Okay,
I'm
but-
not meant, it's not my money. I'm not making a gift here.
But do you feel that the people with the money feel that the 3 weeks would be a deal killer for them?
I can't speak for them, but
Okay.
I've heard that time is of the essence with regard to this gift.
Well, then that's
So
kind of,
that's what I'm
that's
just
kind of
weighing. That's all
disturbing.
I'm doing is weighing that.
That's a little disturbing.
Yeah, because they obviously don't know how it works.
But in the end, if it's disturbing, and I'm saying I appreciate that you're disturbed by that,
I'm glad you appreciate my disturbance.
but what I'm telling you is, in the end, it may not, because of your concerns, it may be something we don't even like to consider. And, well,
Okay,
that's the
so-
downside.
So, okay.
Yeah, but I think at the LCDC meeting, most of the people there on the committee were saying that they realized that to get a good job, it is gonna take a little bit longer and not to really rush it, because what's the point of doing it if we don't have a good job? You know, if it's not something that everybody can support and say, this was done well, this is something that we can really pay attention to,
Right.
then why do it? You know,
So,
that's the whole thing.
so, to me, that speaks to trusting them and their time frame that they don't wanna get willy-nilly out there to just anybody. They think this is a reasonable time frame, and they wanna operate under this time frame. And so,
Well, if
we're
they
second
can get
guessing their
three-
time frame versus your time
You know
frame.
what, if
anyway.
we had this proposal on Monday and could have worked on it, we'd be there now.
I know.
So, I mean,
I don't
it's like
wanna
not
rehash
us,
that either.
it's really not us.
Well, it may not take us too long to,
Yeah, I mean, I
You're
don't,
right,
I
I know what
don't, I
we
don't
think.
think there are that many outstanding issues.
you know, I mean, we just add the plan, as we just said, add the planning board, and maybe put your language in, Vicky, here.
But I think where we do have a problem is with the incredible urgency. And if the urgency is related to the donors and not to the committee, that is disturbing.
But what if, let's say we agree on a proposal, request proposal, and we put it out there, and then we have to see who,
In 2
who
weeks.
responds.
Who responds in 2
Yeah,
weeks?
who responds, and if we don't get enough people responding, then
But
we
what
have
if
to
we,
wait a little bit
but what if
longer.
we get, what if we get 2 responses or 1 response?
Well, then we have to wait, and,
I mean, how many
That's more.
responses do we wanna get?
We know
I
that
think
Store
three.
Net's gonna respond,
Well, you never
because
know.
he's waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's,
yeah, I think a
And,
minimum
and
of three.
that's,
And who knows, you might get one proposal and it might be
Just
a
him.
beautiful work of art, in which case you can say, well, this is great.
Yeah,
But my sense is that each step is gonna inform the next step.
yeah.
And it may be that the proposals come back saying, we need more time to work this out. In which case, they'll be like, all right, take more time to work it out.
All right, so how does everybody feel about the timing that's presented in here?
well, I think we
Well,
should
I
try
think
to,
it should be, yeah, it's always everything's a matter of balance.
I
And, yeah,
think-
it should be a little more balanced than it currently is.
I think I have an issue with August 15th completion date, meaning that means all the visioning is gonna happen over the summer.
yeah, and as Rich just said.
People are out of
that's-
town, they're not thinking about stuff, I think it's
Right.
gonna be hard to get a good,
Yeah, I mean,
Feel for
that's
the
a
pulse of
practical.
Yeah,
town.
Rich, tell the
in the
LCDC
middle of the
committee that.
summer.
I mean, talk to them about that, about having, trying to do it over the summer.
Well,
'cause it-
I mean, yes, I can carry that feedback
Yeah, yeah.
back there,
'Cause
because,
maybe they
you know,
weren't thinking, maybe they weren't thinking about that. Maybe they
I
weren't
wasn't
realizing
there
that
last
people-
night, so I
No,
can't.
I mean in the past,
Yeah.
because they've been talking
Mhm.
about, because people are on vacation
Well,
and
people
people
go
just,
to have summer homes, they go away for a month.
oh, yeah.
yeah, it's just not a good
Mhm.
time to do stuff.
The others, I'm not really clear from this, it says the LCDC wishes to engage a consultant to help fulfill its charge. And then the professional services will be negotiated by LCDC and Lyme Planning Board. But I don't get, does that mean that the planning board is involved in the consultant selection? Or does that mean once the LCDC selects the consultant, the planning board gets to help negotiate the scope of work or whatever? I mean,
Yeah,
I
I
don't,
think
I
that
don't
was-
understand
I
that.
think
It's
John's,
the
I think John's comment is that anywhere it says LCDC, it should say LCDC and planning board.
And planning
Yes.
board, okay,
Well,
okay,
in that
okay. That's it.
paragraph, I had it down that it was gonna be this opening one was gonna be the town and the select board,
Right,
rather than referring to LCDC at all in that.
right,
Because technically, that's who
right,
will engage as consultant.
right.
And then down the road, we do talk about the fact that the town has engaged LCDC and then the planning board, and everywhere else we've referred to everybody working together.
Well, except in number 6, evaluation factors, the LCDC will rate proposals. It doesn't say LCDC and planning
Well,
board.
I know,
knew
but that's
that.
John's.
I wrote that
that's
I did,
John's
I wrote
argument.
that in too.
Okay, thank
So
you.
Rusty, you're
Well,
saying that the select board will decide who's gonna do the work?
Yes.
So then what
on
is, what
their
is
own.
it?
So there's no
discussed it.
input from.
No, that's not that there's no input, because I don't see, at the risk that there's an impasse, that the planning board wants
That would
this
never
person,
happen.
and the CDC wants this person.
Right.
The select board is going to choose based on the recommendations that they hear from both parties, and they're gonna pick, and that's how we're gonna break the tie, so to speak. Okay, so,
Yeah, so basically the select board, it will.
because that
Well,
is
they have
the
the final
authority
say.
Yeah,
that.
they will have. the
Whoever has
final-
the final say can choose.
Will do whatever they
Well,
want.
that's the
Well,
the
that's,
way it's
there's
written.
gotta be a backstop somewhere, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
Yeah,
we
that's
we
fine.
are the contracting authority, and that's
You
what
are,
it's gonna be.
you
Yeah.
are.
So if it comes to that, then I hope it doesn't. I mean, I don't want it to. I'd like us to come to consensus on who we want.
I think it's,
Right.
I think it's really important for both the committee and the planning board and the town, that that there's really consensus.
Right. And hopefully the way it'll work out is we'll get 3 people bidding, and
At least.
one of those, at least 3, maybe 4, and one of those will be fantastic, and the other 3 will be so-so, and it won't be a problem. We'll say, we all agree that this is the one.
And that is actually,
That would
there's a
be
good
great.
chance of that happening.
Or
That would
you,
be
or you
great.
have 2 that you call back for interviews and then you get to meet them,
Yeah,
which is.
well, that was Mike Smith's point, we
Yeah.
really should meet at the meeting.
It definitely have to.
Yeah. And that's where I'm saying we would address this 1, 2, 3 scenario idea is in the interview process,
Right.
rather than in the RFP, right? We wouldn't necessarily put that in there. That I think the RFP is fine, written with G and H basically covering the fact that that's gonna be the subject of this, and the details will be negotiated during the interview process.
What are G and H? Go discuss, where, G and H under what?
Under project description, I thought discuss the logistical issues for possible development
Discuss logical areas for possible additional development?
and type of development that might be economic. Those two combined, I think, relate to a potential plan. And I think at that time, you also can talk about a do-nothing plan. And we want to compare that do-something plan to a do-nothing plan.
Well, that's not exactly what, I mean, what I liked was what Vicki was suggesting.
Well, maybe in talking with the consultant, that they would find it would be easier to work in that way. I mean, the RFP is not a contract.
Right.
And our scope of services hopefully would be monitor what, you know, would be mirroring what was in the RFP, because then it's easy, we just copy it over, but if we needed to modify it, we can do that.
All right, so it's after 10. We've already been going at this for 3 hours, I mean, overall for 3 hours.
I'll
I think if
I'll summarize my notes, that those are minor changes, is just to put in the select board, the town, and the select board in the two places where there's just the town, and then the select board, and then the town, where the LCDC is in the introduction bottom paragraph. And then add the planning board to item 6.
I'd say, just to be certain, anywhere, I think that probably covers it, but anywhere where the LCDC is
Right.
covered, the
That's what-
planning board.
Right.
Are you gonna change the dates at all, or are you gonna leave it just as is? Because the August 15th endpoint doesn't, do they really believe that that's gonna be a good thing?
But it does have a caveat here, that bidders may propose a date earlier or later than that.
I like that.
So that kind of opens that
Well,
door.
let's say the bidders in the planning board may propose, because and nobody thinks it's good.
Well, I'm just saying, I don't wanna, in an effort to move this.
We're
so that we
trying
put
to
a-
do that. We're
Well,
sitting here
I think,
doing
the-
that.
I think
Proposal out
the
there.
effort is there. What we're
Right.
discussing is that we're working together, and we both need to compromise. I think the planning board is certainly compromised. So it'd be nice to.
I mean, why not change the August 15th to October 15th? That's 2 more months.
Yeah, what's the
It
big
gives
deal?
a chance for all the visioning to be done in September, then they can write the report.
I mean, frankly, I think that the best time to do it would be after August, September or something, when,
After
when,
school
when,
starts.
once school starts and you're gonna get a much broader, spectrum of the population present.
I mean, if August 15th is the ideal completion date, that's,
Do you remember when the last
Not
one
so.
was? I mean, I remember it was cool, and I was in a barn.
maybe the August
That's
15th.
about all I
is
can
the test
remember.
case.
So I was at the
Go back and
Academy
say,
building,
"Yep,
and
that's a bad
it
idea. You
was
shouldn't."
cold, I think.
Actual vision meetings that we had?
With the
Yeah,
RPC,
yeah, I was at actually the Ramsden's barn.
Right. Well, I remember back when we were doing the master plan, we had, I'm sure we decided back then that we weren't gonna do visioning in the summer.
Yeah,
We
I
always
think
waited
that's,
until,
that's pretty obvious.
yeah.
That's what I don't understand.
So maybe you should ask Rusty to take back the thought,
Who
not,
does he take it back to? I mean, are you guys meeting tomorrow? You'd be changing it and giving it to Dina, right?
We'll give it to the board.
Oh, the board's meeting tomorrow?
No, we'll present that and say, and then Sue will probably take it to the committee and probably get a report, and everybody will think about it, and they have to call a special meeting
Oh.
to discuss it and to approve it. This has been approved so far,
Well, this
Right.
doesn't have to get approved by the LCDC, does it?
it does not. So
It only has to
if
get
this
approved by the
goes out,
select board, so.
if Dina can send this out, I'll say these are the changes that were discussed tonight. If we distribute it and it's okay with everybody on the board, then we give Dina the okay to submit the RFP.
I mean, so do you agree with the August, do you agree with the August
I'm not-
15th?
I'm gonna abstain from that vote and say, because I'm on the select board and I want the sense of the rest of the planning board. I don't want to weigh in on that.
Well, no, but I mean, as a select board member, what are
It's a
your
select board
thoughts?
member.
I'm,
Well, as a select board member, you've already voted on it to
Yes.
approve it.
Yeah,
So,
so,
That's exactly
so that's,
right.
so you,
I guess all three have,
yeah.
right.
maybe it didn't get.
But they can change their mind.
We could change it, that's right. If you
So
were that, if you were that strong.
I would say
Well,
October
it seems to be common
fifteenth just
sense, I mean,
makes,
right? It's
makes
gotta be
common sense.
I mean, cause it's,
You want more people to participate.
Yep.
yeah.
So our biggest complaints are the planning board's not mentioned in,
Well, yeah, so that's being addressed.
and the August 15th date, and
Pretty scenarios.
And what?
in the three scenarios,
The three scenarios.
or are we letting go of that one?
I think it's
Well, I
important.
think it's, yeah.
I think it should be in there.
So where should that go?
That should be in
That should
the,
replace could replace G and H in project description, right?
yeah, and of course, the consult.
Develop three scenarios of varying intensity of development.
Well,
where-
Vicky's language is
Well,
available.
right.
Yeah.
But, and again, I think there can be language there that says that the consultant we hire, if they think that's a terrible idea, they, you know, they can suggest an alternative. But that's what we're looking for. I mean, ultimately, the consultant is, this is a request for a proposal, so so,
To be negotiated.
yeah, so they're gonna come back and say, well, here's our proposal, you know, yeah, I read what you said, but here's what I would do.
Right.
But it'd be nice to have in there at least, you know, what
we're
we would
thinking
like.
about, yeah.
And so
And I'm suggesting that you're gonna have that opportunity, because
yeah,
I
I
don't
know,
think.
but
Say.
I'd be
Don't
more
they-
comfortable.
it
Don't they
doesn't-
have to know what they're bidding on?
It doesn't hurt to put it in.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have it in.
Don't they have to know what they're bidding on?
no, they're going to send in a proposal, so,
To fix.
But they have to kind of have an idea for their proposal
Of
of
what
what
we're
we
looking
want,
for.
what we want, I mean. It's kind of, yeah.
So, all right, so here's my question to the board. How does everybody feel about, I mean, we're going over this, obviously pretty exhausted.
I would trust you to write up what we said tonight.
Oh, man, I don't wanna write anything else.
No, but I mean, no, just write, just what we want, what we
Well, I
want
mean,
to say.
I trust Rusty
I
to,
trust Rusty.
I trust Rusty to take the notes.
Okay.
But
Taking
so,
notes.
so, I mean, I don't wanna write anything else, I'm sick of
Well, I
writing.
just meant, put it down, what we've said, and then hand it in.
So,
But
so
maybe
the
we don't
only,
have to do that, maybe Rusty can.
the only note that I don't have is specifically how I'm going to, if it's a vote of this board to change G and H
I would,
to this language,
Rusty,
then.
here's what Vicky wrote for
Well,
the
no,
three
we'll just
scenarios.
use.
The second paragraph.
John's is.
no, I would actually, I would suggest following, I can't even think anymore.
It's the top of the page, right?
I don't know.
Vicky's,
No, here, this is it. I mean, I really, I can't guarantee, yeah,
Is
you
this on
could,
yours, or where is this?
you could use this, but the problem with going over this now is I'm fried, so are you. We're all fried, and this is exactly the way to do terrible work. And that's what bothers me about the rush.
Well, that's what.
And this is
also about-
gonna be crappy because we're exhausted. And it's not because we haven't been acting in good faith, it's because we got this, I got it like a half hour before the meeting. So, I mean, my question is, I'm willing to have an extra meeting on Monday so that we can actually go over this when we're
Yeah, let's do
not
that.
mentally deranged,
Right.
or not as mentally deranged.
Well, I'm not gonna be in the country on Monday, so
What country are you gonna be in?
some other country.
she's not telling.
Okay, let's not get specific, okay. Well, when could you meet?
When could I really don't have time, I'm working all day tomorrow
Yeah.
and I need to pack because I'm
Okay.
going on a week-long trip with my mother.
Oh, God,
on
no, I don't wanna
baby
even
on
hear about it. I don't wanna hear
Saturday,
about
and,
it.
yeah, so I
Okay, so
really don't have
Vicky's out of
time
the picture.
before I.
Well, it's
leave.
too bad, because Vicky's a crucial
Well, I
person.
gave you guys some ideas about what I
But,
thought.
okay, so
and-
here's my
and I
question.
appreciate-
I'm uncomfortable about making decisions that are really important under the conditions we're making.
So we want to have.
I don't know, I'm just telling you, that's my
Well,
concern.
can you get a quorum on Monday is another question.
I don't know.
You can continue this meeting till Monday, so you don't have to repost, but, can you get a quorum, is there gonna be people, and then, will the select board wait that long?
I
That's
don't know.
another question. So
Would
it's-
the select board be willing to,
When is the select board meeting?
would, I think Sue, come to the meeting and maybe try to, it's very hard when you have two different committees working at two different times, to try to iron something out.
That's why we tried to meet together on
Yeah.
Monday, and that's why we should have
Yeah, that
those
was
kinds of
good.
things on the
That was-
agenda.
that
It was
was
a
a
great
good meeting.
meeting, but,
Yeah.
we should have had the RFP.
I think that
This is
meeting
nuts.
was great, because we actually made progress.
We did.
If you could try to get at least some of the members from the LCDC, Sue is the representative, to meet on Monday, hammer everything out as a
Well,
group.
who's available on Monday?
I'm available.
I don't know.
Is Sue available? Do you know if Sue's available? You guys don't have a select board meeting on Monday, right? No, so
Not
she
yet.
might be. Yeah, so she might be.
I don't know.
It'd be nice.
Unfortunately, I have a 12-year-old at home alone. I really can't stay any later.
Okay, no, you're excused.
I don't see a decision being made here, so, I
Okay.
mean, and
No, I
whatever decision is made, let me know.
Okay,
Well, it sounds like by Monday we'll have it done, so.
Thank you.
all right, thank you.
No, thank you.
So what is the board's sense?
I mean, I think those are the three concerns that I have. When does the select board
Yeah.
meet on tomorrow?
No, they will not meet again until next Thursday.
They meet every
Yeah.
Thursday. They met today.
And how is this gonna get rewritten and re-voted on and sent out?
What they were gonna have to do is send it out to the three members, and each three members just respond back, saying, yes, I have no problem with that, and
So Rusty was gonna edit it and send it out.
send it to Dina, she
Right.
send it out and get it back.
So,
All we need is Jay packing up his briefcase.
But we could do that on,
okay, so did people just, what do you wanna do? Do you wanna just say, go ahead? Those are the three things?
It may be all we get, but
We're not gonna get anything more, I mean, honestly.
Okay.
If they like
So
the
go get
scenario
Rusty and
thing-
tell him.
He's gone, I saw lights.
I will email Rusty before I leave
All
tonight.
right, so
and-
we're saying, those are the three things, and that's,
but what is, does he know and think?
What are the, just
I-
make sure,
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
go with the three things. again.
this is just
Yeah.
such a lousy way to work.
When else are we gonna do it?
If we met again. It's like, if I was in the state I'm in now at the beginning of this meeting, going over that site plan
Well,
review.
trust me, I'm as gone as you are.
So,
Let's meet Monday, if we can, and
can you be here?
as far as I know, it won't be a popular.
Hey, your wife
Popular
was,
activity.
With
how long was she gone?
Or your family.
What are your thoughts? I mean, do you understand?
I do, yeah. I think
I mean, we're talking about, I'm sorry, we're talking
Yeah.
about having members of the committee, and we have a member of the committee.
right, and there's no quorum on my side, so.
Right. So you're- yeah.
So I think the RFP is fine. I think saying LCDC and planning board as suggested is there. I did not express my concern about the August date. So I think the thing to do is exactly what you're saying. Rusty, take this to the select board. See if everybody will sign off on it. And then go.
You mean
from there.
the October
Well,
October.
all of those things, the planning board and LCDC and planning board,
And then the
And
I
tripartite.
hope that moving forward.
Yeah.
we'll
just
still have an
let's move this
influence
forward,
on
because I
process.
think it's good enough. I mean, I am a
Okay.
horrible perfectionist myself,
Yeah,
and I see lots of things that I would have changed, but it's like,
okay.
I wasn't there, and it is good enough. Our consultants are gonna come in, and this is not a new thing
Okay.
for them.
So,
So, I'm not trying to push more work on you, what do you mean? So the sticking point is incorporating this language
Yes.
right now.
yes,
Can you take one more stab at that tomorrow morning?
I'm not doing it tonight.
Not tonight,
No.
one way, and send it to
I
Rusty.
mean, I'm not sure that the LCDC is gonna be prepared to accept a whole lot of change.
What a beautiful part.
I mean, I don't know, I was not at that meeting, I can't say.
Up and close.
yeah, I guess, but I guess
I
like,
think this has been an
It's its own
incredibly,
country, really.
they could see this meeting as incredibly conciliatory, and that,
Cool.
okay, let's just go forward with this.
Haven't had a chance to read it.
I didn't follow that.
I think, I'm glad that you did not decide to send the completely rewritten proposal, because that would have got everybody's back up, and would
Right.
not have been good. I think this set of changes would satisfy the everybody in the LCDC, or enough of the people on the LCDC, to be able to move forward, expressing the concern about the August date, I think is worthwhile. And so, I mean, I think that's the best course for this group. And pretty much, I think you just pretty much decided that, to leave it in Rusty's hands.
Well,
And
I don't think he has the August date as one of his changes.
No, and he also doesn't have the three scenarios.
And, you know, I'm not so hung up on the three scenarios. I will certainly, when we talk to the consultants, say, so like, how many different scenarios could you envision producing?
Well, hopefully one of us will be there too.
I would surely hope so. Yes.
yeah, so I guess, you know, that,
And surely they would say, it really makes no sense to do a visioning process in the middle of summer.
And they may well say that, in which case, that,
you know, I'd like to move it along, and I also think this is a really lousy way to work, and that getting this proposal puts undue pressure on us to,
It's not playing fair is what it gets down to.
it's not playing fair.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's just not playing fair.
If they really wanted us to
You know, I mean, if we
participate, would've
sent,
had
if
it
we
on
sent
Monday.
you guys a proposal, you know, if the situation was reversed and we said, here it is, you're meeting tonight after a 2-hour site plan review, we need it tomorrow morning,
Well,
what would you say?
Let's say, David, you can summarize our concerns in a very quick email. You can say the board ran out of time, these are the main concerns, the board wants to talk about it again next week.
Yeah, I think
Because that's where we are,
that,
we're not
that,
gonna
that
get far
that in
tonight.
principle, we're very close. We want essentially equal billing. We think it should be October 15th. And why we think that is that we'll get a greater turnout. And we'd like to have language in there about different scenarios. But in a general, the further comment is that at this point, we're really not in a state to intelligently deliberate.
I will email that to Rusty.
So what do you got? So
You want equal billing, the October 15th deadline, push everything out by 2 months, and you want to have language in the RFP that says you would like 3 scenarios.
And you can say we're happy, the board is, we're also happy to meet and work on that next week,
yeah.
Yep.
right, we're willing to do that.
So what are we, so how is this being left in terms of meeting next week?
we'll see if the select board.
See what the
gives
select
us a
board
chance.
says. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn.
Before you do, sorry, I just have a quick, take one of these on your way out. This is a subdivision application that is coming up, not in next meeting, but on the 24th, I believe it is.
Thank you, thank you.
So when will you be back here?
I will be back.